Everyone collapsed breathlessly on the shore, healing each other's wounds in utter exhaustion. City Lord Qin, the divine blade was already drawn. Why didn't you slay that monster? Since young Master Su told us to wait, we'll wait until he returns, Qin Haosher explained calmly. You think that guy might have run off with the divine blade? Yeah, he's always been suspicious. What if he tricked us into helping him seize the divine blade, then escaped? Though we haven't known him long, I don't think young Master Su is that kind of person, Literature Sovereign said. There must be a reason. Everyone fell silent. By now, doubt had already crept into their hearts, but no one voiced it. Someone's coming! A shout rang out suddenly from the side. Everyone quickly sat up, looking toward the distant northern sea. A lone figure was flying across the waves, sprinting desperately toward them. Just a few meters away, the figure finally collapsed, sinking into the water. It's young Master Su. Save him, Literature Sovereign shouted. Everyone rushed forward, dragging the severely injured Su Zimo from the sea. Literature Sovereign continuously channeled spirit energy into Su Zimo's body. Su Zimo coughed several times, spitting out mouthfuls of seawater before slowly waking up. What happened? Su Zimo asked weakly. Where's the monster? Qin Haosher asked quickly. I fought it for several rounds, Su Zimo said. It was too strong. I suffered heavy injuries and barely escaped. As for where it is now, I don't know. But you had the divine blade. How could you still lose? Someone asked. Su Zimo slowly stood, sighing. Let's return to Flame Stone City first. I'll explain on the way. Everyone nodded. As they walked, Su Zimo said, I only knew that the divine blade could be used to fight the monster. I knew one part, but not the other. The blade has an activation condition. I only discovered that after obtaining it. An activation condition? What condition? Literature Sovereign asked. Willpower, the collective will of all living beings, Su Zimo replied. The more willpower it receives, the stronger its power becomes. Everyone went quiet for a long while. Then Qin Haosher spoke up. Actually, this isn't as difficult as it sounds. Oh? City Lord Qin, what do you suggest? Someone asked. In this age of chaos, I believe we can gather everyone across the continent, Qin Haosher said. If we unite the people and have them offer their willpower, we can awaken the divine blade. That shouldn't be too hard. But what if some are too afraid of the monster to come? Another asked. Those ruled by fear are useless, Qin Haosher said sternly. They'll only earn the scorn of all living creatures. We'll build momentum. Once the majority stand with us, the timid ones will follow. And with the 6 sovereigns, the strongest of this era, who would dare oppose? We have the advantage of heaven, earth, and people alike. Since City Lord Qin has spoken, let's do it, Literature Sovereign said. We'll each go to the western mountains, the northern wilderness, the southern seas, and the eastern tombs to spread the word. Then, all across the land, we'll unite for the final battle against the monster. Everyone nodded in agreement. The 6 sovereigns departed in different directions to spread the call, while Su Zimo and Qin Haosher returned to the City Lord's mansion to await news and the gathering of willpower. In Flame Stone City, the entire city was on high alert. Su Zimo returned to the mansion, and for several days nothing unusual occurred. But soon, more and more people began arriving from all corners of the world. The city grew more crowded than ever before, so crowded that Flame Stone City could no longer hold everyone. Even the lands for 1,000 miles beyond its walls were packed with people. The 6 sovereigns eventually returned as well. Standing atop the city wall, Su Zimo and the others gazed out across the sea of people, an endless mass stretching beyond the horizon. Well, Qin Haosher said with satisfaction. Do you think this is enough? In the coming days, even more will arrive. Then let everyone offer their willpower to the divine blade, Su Zimo said. Literature Sovereign nodded slightly and issued the command, which was quickly passed down layer by layer. Outside the city walls, millions of living beings sat cross-legged in silence. Su Zimo raised Shadow Tyrant into the air. This kind of willpower wasn't simple, it required true sincerity. Only a heart filled with genuine devotion could produce it. Pretenders, those without purity of heart, would yield nothing. But with chaos looming over the world and despair consuming all, every living being truly desired to destroy it through the divine blade. Su Zimo looked up at the sky and saw countless unseen streams of willpower flowing into Shadow Tyrant. Though invisible to the eye, the blade could feel them clearly. Its body trembled, almost in joy. As the willpower grew stronger, the blade's energy reservoir continued to rise. Just as the crowd's joy began to build, a thunderous roar shook the heavens. The monstrous figure of chaos appeared in the distance. "It's coming! It's the monster!" someone shouted. "Don't be afraid. With the divine blade, we'll surely win," another cried. "We will surely win." The chant spread through the masses, becoming a rallying cry. Young Master Su, Qin Haoshi and the others turned toward him. Su Zimo nodded slightly. "Everyone, if I do not return from this, let the lineage of the primordial domain fade quietly. Do not speak of it to the world." "Young Master Su, you are a true hermit and hero. We are unworthy to compare," Qin Haoshi said solemnly. "We will obey." "Wishing you victory and safe return," the crowd shouted in unison. Su Zimo gazed ahead, then stepped into the air from the city wall. His figure swept across the void, right hand grasping Shadow Tyrant. The blade's tip pointed toward chaos, and an overwhelming aura of blade intent surged across the heavens, filling the sky like a vast sea. "Are you ready to be buried?" The furious voice of chaos thundered across the land. "Kill!" Su Zimo roared. He charged forward, slashing with all his might. A deafening explosion shook the air as boundless blade intent collided with chaos's claw. All eyes below were fixed on the sky, hearts tight, breaths held. This battle would decide the fate of the entire world and every living being upon it. None could look away. Blade energy and beastly power clashed and burst apart in the void. Their figures crossed and separated. Su Zimo staggered back more than 10 meters, while the colossal body of chaos was also hurled aside. Roaring furiously, chaos's abdomen crackled with lightning as a crimson torrent surged towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo raised Shadow Tyrant and unleashed waves of blade intent, the wide blade intercepting the raging current head-on. The torrent grew more violent, colliding fiercely against Su Zimo's defense. After a brief stalemate, it suddenly exploded. Su Zimo was blasted backward, his body flung through the air. On the walls of Flamestone City, Qin Haoshi said anxiously, "Should we go help young Master Su?" "It's useless," Literature Sovereign replied. "We'd only get in the way and die for nothing. This is not a battle we can join. Let's observe and keep our faith." "Agreed," said another. "Rather than charging in, we should offer more of our willpower to aid him." Everyone sat cross-legged, channeling their willpower into the divine blade. "Kill!" Su Zimo roared, stepping out from the shattered void with Shadow Tyrant in hand. His blade light tore through the sky, bursting forth with tens of thousands of meters of radiant intent. The blade's force struck Chaos's massive body, slicing deep into its flesh. Chaos let out a deafening cry of pain. "Well struck!" someone shouted from below. Su Zimo pulled the blade free and leapt back swiftly. But Chaos, now even more enraged, swung its claws and seized Shadow Tyrant, trying to rip it and Su Zimo away. "God blade descend!" Su Zimo bellowed. An earth-shattering surge of blade will erupted, like the descent of an overlord within the weapon itself. Claws and blade clashed violently. Space shattered, sparks flew, and thunderous booms echoed one after another. The eternal will of the blade and the feral might of the beast swept across the sky together. After more than a dozen rounds, the two figures finally broke apart. "Young Master Su, don't fight it head-on, attack its eyes," someone shouted from the wall. "Silence!" Chaos roared. His body lunged toward Flamestone City. But before it could advance a few steps, Su Zimo blocked its path. "You'll have to go through me first." If it's death you seek, I'll grant it to you, Chaos bellowed. Behind it, a pair of enormous wings unfurled, dark as night, each vein glowing with a blood-red light. The sight was like hell itself spreading open. Chaos shot upward into the sky, moving faster than lightning, vanishing and reappearing as it soared higher and higher. When it reached the heavens, it spread its limbs wide, and its abdomen began to draw in endless spirit energy. The aura within a 100-mile radius was devoured, flooding into its body. Even before the power was released, everyone could already feel the overwhelming dread. "What's it trying to do?" someone cried. "I don't know. Be ready for anything." In the sky, as Chaos roared, countless red lines spread from its abdomen, merging with the air itself. In an instant, the heavens changed. Storm, thunder, lightning, all turned blood-red. The crimson lightning flashed like liquid fire, lighting up the sky in horrifying brilliance. "Demon essence detonation," Chaos bellowed. The lightning transformed into a rain of blazing meteors, countless, unending, tens of millions of them. Each one burned with searing fire, tearing and scorching the heavens as they fell. "Fall," Chaos hissed. The sky rained destruction. "It's like the sky itself is collapsing," someone whispered in terror. "Run! Run! Below!" Billions of beings panicked, scattering like headless ants as the firestorm descended. As the meteors neared the ground, Su Zimo's eyes hardened. He stepped forward beneath them, Shadow Tyrant in hand. He swung the divine blade, and billions of waves of invisible blade intent spread outward. The energy solidified into tangible force, holding the falling meteors in midair, freezing them in place. But Su Zimo was straining to the limit. Sweat poured down his face in heavy drops as he struggled to maintain the barrier. "Detonate!" Chaos's mocking voice thundered from above. All the meteors exploded simultaneously. Before Su Zimo could react, a blazing shockwave engulfed him. The world lit up with fire, an inferno blossoming like a deadly, magnificent flower, consuming everything. "Young Master Su!" people screamed from the walls. When the last explosion faded, they looked up again. Su Zimo's charred body fell from the sky like a burnt shadow. "Save him!" Literature Sovereign shouted, leaping into the air. They caught his falling body and brought him down. His flesh was torn and burned, he was barely alive. "I'm fine," Su Zimo gasped, struggling to his feet and shaking his head. "Young Master Su, please rest," Qin Haosher urged. "For the sake of all life, what's death to me?" Su Zimo said coldly. Above him, Chaos once again gathered power, its abdomen swelling with another crimson torrent. "I'll offer my life," Su Zimo said solemnly, "and ignite my blood to awaken the divine blade. I may not survive this, but if I die, keep the divine blade safe. Pray to it. Let it protect this world." As they watched him charge once more, many were moved to tears. Su Zimo infused his own blood essence into Shadow Tyrant. The blade shone brighter and brighter, releasing an overwhelming aura. Veins bulged across his arms, his face twisted with pain and determination. He charged toward Chaos like a comet of light. Chaos's power in its abdomen had not yet fully gathered when Su Zimo rushed straight into it. "You're insane," Chaos roared in panic. "Then we die together." Su Zimo laughed madly. Blade energy and beastly might erupted in all directions. Chaos screams echoed through the heavens. A deafening explosion followed. Chaos's massive body was torn apart, shattered into countless chunks of flesh raining from the sky. Blood poured down like rain. Everyone below stood drenched, staring upward in shock and disbelief. "It's over," someone finally whispered after a long silence. People slowly began to understand. "The monster is dead. We're free. It's dead. Everything's over. Wait, where's young Master Su?" They looked up again, but there was no trace of Su Zimo, only a broken divine blade drifting down from the void. The blade was ruined, its power gone, no different from scrap metal. He must have sacrificed himself, Qin Haoshi said quietly. A long sigh rippled through the crowd. Young Master Su was a true great man. Compared to him, we are ashamed. No matter what, victory is ours. The monster has been defeated, and though the continent lies in ruins, it will recover, and that will depend on all of you. Everyone, I have a suggestion, Qin Haoshi said from the side. City Lord Qin, please speak, replied King Wei Jin with a nod. Young Master Su sacrificed himself for the entire continent. He should not fade into obscurity. Let us declare today a hero's day, to commemorate the new life young Master Su brought to this world. Qin Haoshi continued, and this divine blade, it was a treasure of the ancient lineage. Though it lies broken now, its meaning is far too great. Let us preserve it, worship it, and perhaps one day, through the will of the people, it may regain its strength. City Lord Qin is right. We must not forget our roots, Literature Sovereign said in agreement. We could even forge replicas of the divine blade throughout the land, symbols of fortune. Let people keep them in their homes, both as remembrance and as a blessing of peace. Everyone nodded in agreement. In their hearts, they were all grateful to Su Zimo. If not for him, the monster would have continued to terrorize the world, and no one would have known peace. Far away, atop a lonely mountain overlooking Flame Stone City, Su Zimo and Chaos stood together at the summit. Watching the distant crowds rejoicing, Su Zimo smiled faintly. See, this is the tragedy of a hero. People will remember your name, but not your pain. My lord has no need for their sorrow, Chaos said quietly. Your purpose has been fulfilled. That is enough. Su Zimo lowered his gaze to Shadow Tyrant in his hand. Streams of willpower from all across the land continued to flow into it endlessly. From this day forward, the entire god world would worship the legend of the divine blade, and Shadow Tyrant would never again lack for faith power. It's mostly complete, Su Zimo said. But in time, as people grow used to peace, their faith in the divine blade will fade, and with it the willpower. Still, I've left a safeguard. In the western mountains lies the ancient mountain, where countless ferocious beasts are sealed. When the myriad beast realm emerges, the balance will shift again. My lord is wise, Chaos replied respectfully. If not for the need to sustain the blade, I'd rather not meddle in this world's course, Su Zimo said, shaking his head. The god world's development is still too young. Otherwise, how could a mere immortal realm beast like you rule over it? Having said that, Su Zimo turned and departed. During teleportation to the Seven Gods Collegium, Su Zimo slowly regained consciousness. How long has it been? He asked. Young Master Su, you've been in contemplation for over 5 days, said Feng Buxiu with a smile. We're almost there. Time flies, Su Zimo nodded. Then he added, Chancellor Feng, I'd like to ask you something. Please, ask freely, Feng Buxiu replied. Have you ever heard of the ancient gods? Su Zimo asked. The ancient gods? Feng Buxiu murmured, frowning. That term sounds familiar. Where have you heard it? Su Zimo pressed. I remember now. Feng Buxiu's eyes lit up. Old Yang from the academy once mentioned it to me. Old Yang. Su Zimo raised an eyebrow. He was an old man at the Seven Gods Collegium, Feng Buxiu explained. Lived an incredibly long time, and he was rather odd. Is he still at the academy? Su Zimo asked. He left long ago. When I was a child, he told me stories about the ancient gods, but I can't recall them clearly anymore, Feng Buxiu admitted. That's unfortunate, Su Zimo said softly. I do remember he left behind a miscellaneous book, Feng Buxiu added. I'll retrieve it for you, it might help. Su Zimo nodded lightly. As they spoke, the spatial coordinates around them began to shift. Waves of spatial energy rippled outward, growing more intense. Hold steady, everyone, we're about to arrive, Feng Buxiu called out. He stepped forward, waved his hands, and tore open the void. A powerful suction pulled them through. When their vision cleared, they were standing atop a mountain peak. The breeze was gentle, and the dozen or so travelers steadied themselves. Su Zimo looked ahead. The scenery resembled that of the ghost god Collegium. Mountains shrouded in mist, divine energy saturating the air, peaks rising like spears through the clouds. Yet there was a stark difference. Here, the plants were ghostly in nature, dark trees and flora that could survive without sunlight. No sea region, Su Zimo murmured. Feng Buxiu pointed toward the tallest mountain among the 1,000 peaks. That is the main academy. Please, follow me, young Master Su. They ascended into the air, stepping across clouds like solid ground. Their robes fluttered in the wind, and within moments, they reached the summit. Changhe, the rest of you may leave, Feng Buxiu said, dismissing the white-robed attendants. Su Zimo stood before the main academy, gazing forward. It was the complete opposite of the ghost god Collegium. That place was filled with eerie mists and unpredictable energy. This one radiated divine majesty and solemn order. In the vast courtyard ahead, towering red columns rose to the heavens, emanating authority and reverence. Above the grand buildings stood statues of gods, each exuding immense divine might as they watched over all below. Rows of walls surrounded the courtyard like a great mural, painted with scenes of deities in their prime. Beyond the courtyard grew trees infused with divine energy, their branches moving as though alive, swaying gently as if in acknowledgement. Let's go to the library, Feng Buxiu said. Old Yang's book should still be there. Su Zimo nodded. They passed through the main gates, where the paths spread wide and open in all directions. Turning left, they entered a shaded avenue leading to another ancient courtyard. At the entrance stood 2 statues of sages dressed in scholars' robes, each holding a scroll. Inside the academy grounds, students in similar robes moved about, their demeanor calm and dignified. Upon seeing Feng Buxiu, they all greeted him respectfully. Ahead stood the library tower, its shelves filled with countless blue-bound volumes neatly arranged. Feng Buxiu led the way upstairs. At the stairwell, he inserted his jade token into a slot, and all barriers dissolved at once. They climbed all the way to the 9th floor. From a long-sealed cabinet, Feng Buxiu took out a dust-covered book box. I'd nearly forgotten this existed, he said. I read it long ago. It's just a collection of odd tales, nothing noteworthy. He handed the book to Su Zimo. Take your time reading it. I'll leave you to it. Su Zimo nodded slightly, signaling to Feng Buxiu that he could leave. He slowly opened the wooden box before him. Dust filled the air, and with a creaking sound, the long-sealed box finally opened, releasing a faint, ancient scent. Inside was a very thick book. Its cover was as hard as steel, black as night. 3 large golden characters were written on the front, the Ode of Gods and Ghosts. Su Zimo opened the book and began reading intently. The top floor of the library was extremely quiet. Few ever came here, and thick layers of dust covered everything. Beside him, a window let in faint rays of dark red twilight. Time passed, and soon night had fully fallen over the 7 gods' Collegium. Only then did Su Zimo exhale slowly and close the book, frowning slightly. The contents were just as Feng Buxiu had described, nothing but a miscellaneous collection. Its scope was vast, touching on nearly every corner of the ghost god heaven. Yet the events it described were trivial. It felt as though the author had intentionally hidden something. Time and again, just as a subject reached its most crucial point, the text would abruptly stop. What exactly is this? Su Zimo muttered to himself. He stared down at the book, thinking for a moment, until suddenly his brows knit together. His gaze fixed on the steel-like cover. Gripping it firmly, he snapped it apart with force, the hard surface splitting cleanly in 2. Inside the cover was a sheet of golden paper. Before he could touch it, the gold paper erupted in brilliant light. A blinding radiance filled the entire library, bathing every corner in gold. 7. A low whisper echoed, a single word, as if it came from the chaos before creation itself, reverberating through the ancient ages, crossing billions of miles to reach Su Zimo's ears. Then, Upon the golden sheet, a shadowy figure appeared. The image was fragmented, almost pixelated, its form unclear, yet faintly human. "It's been a long time," the phantom said with a faint smile. "You're Old Yang?" Su Zimo asked in surprise. "Old Yang was only a name," the phantom replied. "More accurately, I am called Seven." "Seven?" Su Zimo frowned. He suddenly remembered the old man he had met in the unfinished palace, one who had called himself Three. "So, are you all part of some kind of organization?" Su Zimo said with a half-smile. "You could say that," the figure of Seven replied calmly. "All beings are one." "You appeared because you need something from me?" Su Zimo asked. "Shouldn't it be you who needs something from me?" The phantom countered with a smile. "I heard from Chancellor Feng that you know about the ancient gods," Su Zimo said. "The ancient gods, yes. I know of one, the wood god Jumong." The elder's phantom smiled faintly. "You're seeking his inheritance, aren't you? Can you tell me where it is?" Su Zimo asked. "It's no great secret. In the forbidden lands of the ghost god Heaven, there lies the Sunflower City. It was once wood god Jumong's homeland, a city formed not from stone, but from towering trees, built from giant spirit woods and phoenix trees. But even if you reach Sunflower City," the old man continued, "you won't find his inheritance. That city is a maze, built upon the 24 divisions of the heavens. There is no true core formation. Its structure changes endlessly with every passing second." "Surely you must have a way," Su Zimo said. "In this world, nothing is absolute," Seven replied. "But long ago, there was one person who entered and left Sunflower City freely." "Who?" "The White Emperor," the phantom said slowly. Su Zimo froze for a moment. The White Emperor? That was the very being he had agreed to represent the Seven Gods Collegium in challenging for White Emperor Mountain. "The White Emperor possesses a compass called Traceless Compass," the phantom continued. "That compass can perceive the balance of yin and yang across all ages, discern the changes of the heavens, reverse time, and even flow backward into the ancient past. With its guidance, you can reach the city." "Why are you helping me?" Su Zimo asked after a brief silence. He had been prepared to negotiate, to exchange favors if necessary, but the phantom, who owed him nothing, had revealed everything freely. "I'm not helping you," Seven said. "I'm helping myself." "I don't quite understand," Su Zimo said. "Please enlighten me." "Walk your path forward," the phantom said with a smile. "One day, you'll part the mist and see your true heart." As his words faded, the golden light dimmed, and the phantom gradually dissolved into the air. The remnants of the book caught fire on their own, burning to ash within moments. The entire library fell silent once again, leaving only Su Zimo standing alone. He descended from the top floor. At the entrance, a young woman was already waiting for him. "You must be young Master Su," she said with a smile. "Chancellor Feng asked me to wait for you and take you to your quarters." Su Zimo nodded slightly. Following behind her, they arrived at a quiet courtyard. The scenery was elegant and tranquil. At its center stood a blazing red tree, its leaves transformed into floating embers that drifted gently through the air. The architecture resembled water towns, serene and graceful. "How does young master find it here?" the woman asked. "It's fine," Su Zimo said with a nod. Then he asked, "And the swordsman who came with me?" He was referring, of course, to sword god Xie Chonglu. "He's not far from you," the woman replied with a light smile. Su Zimo nodded again and gestured for her to leave. Once the woman stepped out of Su Zimo's courtyard, her pleasant expression vanished. Several white-robed youths emerged from the shadows nearby. "Well, Senior Sister Zhua, how did it go?" one of them asked. "He's the one the Chancellor said would represent our academy in the coming contest?" The woman nodded slightly. "Judging by how the Chancellor treats him, it seems all but decided." "That's unfair," one of the young men said angrily. "We've trained for years, and now some outsider shows up and takes our place?" Complaining won't change anything, another muttered. Maybe we should ask the Chancellor ourselves. Yeah, senior brother Hongyu went with the Chancellor, didn't he? Why hasn't he returned? The group began arguing in low voices. The woman, senior sister Zhua, seemed to grow impatient. Forget trying to change the Chancellor's mind, she said coldly. Better we teach him a lesson. Then the Chancellor will have to reconsider his choice. The others hesitated for a moment, then nodded in agreement. Flames surged. Boundless fire swept across Su Zimo's sea of consciousness. Sweat streamed down his forehead as the inferno seemed ready to melt him entirely. Suddenly, his tightly shut eyes snapped open. He slowly exhaled a long breath. The redness on his face faded bit by bit. The flames receded, and Su Zimo's eyes were as bright as twin torches. This fire god ancient Tao truly is tyrannical, Su Zimo murmured to himself as he cultivated with the flame of Zhurong. As he breathed out, a stream of white mist flowed through his meridians and exited from his mouth. When he looked up again, daylight had already broken outside. Su Zimo rose from the bed and opened the door. The flaming tree in the courtyard still burned ceaselessly, its crimson branches crackling softly. In the courtyard, someone was already seated, though Su Zimo hadn't noticed when that person had arrived. A young man sat in the pavilion, holding a black stone in his right hand and a white one in his left, playing a game of chess against himself. "Good morning, brother," the young man said with a smile. "Morning," Su Zimo replied evenly, yawning once. "Would you care for a game?" the youth asked, gesturing toward the board. Su Zimo smiled faintly and sat down across from him. "Chess is like life. Please, you take the first move," the youth said. "White pieces are like dragons. Dragons soar to the heavens, serpents crawl upon the earth," Su Zimo said as he placed a white piece forward. "Then black coils from behind. Even serpents can swallow dragons," the youth countered, dropping a black stone. "Human desire is endless. If serpents can swallow elephants, why not dragons? A serpent that cultivates for 10,000 years becomes a python, then a dragon. Why not indeed?" Their words quickened, and their hands moved faster and faster. Stones clattered against the board in a rhythmic storm. Soon the board was filled with pieces, black and white locked in fierce struggle. Su Zimo placed his next stone squarely in the center. "Dragon and serpent may both roam the 9 heavens," he said calmly, "but I am the heavens. Dragon and serpent alike are within my grasp." The piece landed with a crisp click. The killing tension that had filled the board suddenly shifted. White surrounded black completely, forming the image of a dragon devouring a serpent. "You've lost," Su Zimo said quietly. "Thank you for your instruction, brother," the youth said, rising and cupping his fists in salute. "You came here just to play chess with me?" Su Zimo asked. "My original intent was to challenge you," the youth said with a grin. "But since I've already lost this game, I've no face to challenge you again. I'll take my leave." He turned to go, but halfway down the path he stopped and said over his shoulder, "Oh, by the way, your friend's been challenged. You might want to check on him." "Xie Chang Lu?" Su Zimo asked. "I don't know his name," the young man shrugged. "He's on the academy's battlefield." Watching the youth's fading figure, Su Zimo frowned slightly. No matter where he went, there were always people eager to test his limits with their ignorance. Leaving the courtyard, he asked for directions along the way and soon made for the battlefield. The battlefield of the 7 Gods Collegium wasn't difficult to find. After about 10 minutes' walk, Su Zimo saw an imposing grand hall ahead. Above its entrance hung a massive plaque inscribed with 2 bold characters, "Battle Intent." Even from afar, one could feel the surging will to fight radiating from it. On the great doors were 2 bronze lion heads serving as handles. From within them came faint, echoing lion roars. Before Su Zimo even entered, he could already hear the shouts and cheers from inside. He grasped the 2 lion head handles and pulled. The tightly closed doors came loose instantly. He tore them right off their hinges and tossed them aside. Ahead stretched a long corridor. On either side stood racks upon racks of weapons, blades, spears, staves, and halberds of every kind. He walked straight through, and the space ahead suddenly opened wide. The battlefield truly lived up to its name. It was a real battlefield. It stretched endlessly into the distance, nothing but yellow sands and the faint outlines of buried bones beneath. This place must once have been a true war ground, now converted by the Academy into a training field. Hit him. Nice hit. Ghost 3, don't you dare lose. We can't afford that shame. From a distance came loud shouting and jeering. Su Zimo followed the noise. Soon, he saw a crowd, hundreds of students in white robes gathered in a wide circle. He stepped forward, pushing through the crowd until he reached the inner ring. In the center, two men were locked in fierce combat. One was a burly, overweight youth wielding a meteor hammer, his strength immense. The other was Xie Chonglu. Xie Chonglu was clearly exhausted, his body marked by several wounds. But his eyes were sharp as blades, and the sword aura around him only grew fiercer the longer he fought. Su Zimo glanced around and noticed several other students lying injured on the ground, bleeding heavily. He understood immediately. These people were taking turns fighting Xie Chonglu in a war of attrition. If this continued, Xie wouldn't last much longer. After all, every one of these academy students was a prodigy of the Seven Gods Collegium. Xie Chonglu was strong, but he was not yet a grand emperor. Against someone like Hong Yu earlier, he'd already been outmatched. In the field, the fat youth, Ghost 3, swung his meteor hammer with tremendous force, each strike howling through the air. Xie Chonglu, weaker in strength, retreated step by step. Yet his gaze stayed locked on his opponent, unyielding. What's wrong? Gonna keep turtling like a coward? Ghost 3 laughed mockingly. You might as well just admit defeat. The words had barely left his mouth when Xie Chongliu's eyes flashed. Strike! He shouted. His long sword whipped out like a viper, winding past the meteor hammer and stabbing straight into Ghost 3's abdomen. You! The fat youth gasped, staring in disbelief. You were too careless, Xie Chonglu said coolly. In battle, those who split their focus are already dead. I'm not convinced. Let's fight again, Ghost 3 roared, unwilling to accept defeat. If this weren't a friendly match, you'd already be a corpse, Xie said coldly, withdrawing his sword. You, Ghost 3 began, but a calm voice interrupted. Stand down. A bet is a bet. A young man stepped out from among the crowd. He wore a simple blue-green robe, and on his forehead was a sun-shaped mark. His eyes radiated a quiet authority, no anger, yet full of power. At his words, Ghost 3 backed away immediately. The name Sword God truly isn't empty, the young man said with a faint smile. My junior brothers are indeed no match for you. I am Tian Yiqing. Might I ask for about myself? The crowd fell silent at once. They too knew, ganging up in a group fight wasn't honorable. But neither could they afford another loss. Xie Chongliu's hand tightened on his sword. He knew his condition, he had no strength left. If he fought now, he'd lose. But the pride of a swordsman would never allow retreat. Fight, Xie said firmly, his voice steady and ringing. Chonglu, rest for a while. Came a light, amused voice from the crowd. Everyone turned to look. Su Zimo walked out slowly, smiling. If you want to spar, he said, I'll practice with you. When Su Zimo stepped forward, the crowd froze in surprise. Tian Yiqing's gaze sharpened slightly, then he smiled. My friend, even if you wish to spar, you should wait your turn. Su Zimo pointed toward Xie Chonglu. He's my friend. He's fought several rounds already and needs a rest. What's the matter? You're allowed to use a revolving lineup, but we can't switch a fighter? Is this the standard of Seven Gods Collegium students? If my friend wishes to take his place, of course that's fine, Tian Yiqing said after a short pause, smiling faintly. Just don't complain to the Chancellor if you lose. Su Zimo laughed softly. It seemed that Feng Buxiu hadn't told them about him. If they knew that Hong Yu had died by his hand, they might not be so eager to challenge him. You go recover first, Su Zimo said, gesturing for Xie Changlu to step back. Then he looked at Tian Yiqing and beckoned. You can make the first move. You're confident, Tian Yiqing said coldly. He raised his right hand, and the calm void around them began to ripple. From that void, a long sword slowly emerged. As the sword glided through the air, its reflection split into countless overlapping shadows that surged toward Su Zimo like rolling clouds. Within those shadows lay the rhythm of drifting and gathering clouds, soft yet deliberate, never missing their mark. Su Zimo clasped his hands behind his back, lightly tapping his foot as he drifted backward. Senior Tian's sevenfold cloud shadows are getting more refined, one of the students whispered from the crowd. Yes, though it's called sevenfold, in truth it's endless. Tian Yiqing's sword grew faster and faster until even the afterimages blurred out of sight. Clouds rolled and scattered. Sword shadows gleamed like lightning. Su Zimo's eyes narrowed. With a single tap of his finger in the air, a crushing pressure fell downward. He ignored how many shadows there were and simply broke them all by sheer force. Explosions burst through the air. Tian Yiqing's body was hurled backward, his sword carving a long trench across the ground before he managed to stop. Not bad, Tian Yiqing said with a faint smile. One breath moves mountains and rivers. His shout rang out, and the sword in his hand transformed into a stream of qi that surged forward with the might of collapsing mountains and flooding seas. That strike pressed down upon Su Zimo, tearing the air apart. Su Zimo gave a cold snort and drew his blade. The blade light pierced the sky, unleashing a world-splitting power that clashed violently with the oncoming mountain sea qi. Another explosion shook the field. The void shattered, and Tian Yiqing was blasted backward once again. That's it, Su Zimo said with a faint smile and shake of his head. Tian Yiqing didn't respond. He was silent for a moment before red spirit energy ignited around his body. Behind him, a pair of blazing crimson wings formed out of fire. The heavenly god feathers, someone whispered. Tian Yiqing took to the air, his sword now wrapped in dazzling flames. Blazing sun-burned sky. His sword swept out, the flames flaring even brighter, surging toward Su Zimo like a tidal wave of heat. Su Zimo sidestepped, and the fiery stream smashed into the ground beside him. The earth cracked apart, white smoke billowing as the ground itself burned. Tian Yiqing darted through the air with terrifying speed, his flaming wings propelling him like a comet. The flames in his hands moved as fluidly as if they were extensions of his arms. After dodging several strikes, Su Zimo frowned slightly and then raised both hands toward the sky. Come down, he commanded. Endless spirit energy poured into his palms, coalescing into a massive hand of light that reached upward, seized Tian Yiqing midair, and slammed him violently into the ground. There was a thunderous crash. The cracked earth quaked. Cough! Tian Yiqing spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with fragments of his insides. You'll pay for this, he snarled, his eyes bloodshot and feral. The sun mark on his forehead flared a deeper crimson, and his entire face turned red as blood. His hair ignited like fire, and power surged endlessly into his hands. World-burning fire lotus. The flames twisted and coiled, condensing into the shape of a lotus. The lotus expanded rapidly, thousands of times its original size, illuminating the entire sky in a fiery red glow. Go, Fire Lotus! Tian Yiqing roared, hurling it toward Su Zimo. Refine everything. Even before the lotus reached him, the air was already scorching hot. Many students nearby found their robes catching fire and screamed as they scrambled backward. Playing with fire? Su Zimo chuckled softly. He who had mastered the Zhurong's fire god ancient Tao, the highest of all flames beneath heaven, had nothing to fear. He raised his hand, and a small flame appeared in his palm. It was faint, yet one glance was enough to know it was no ordinary fire. Unlike the usual crimson of flames, this one was a chaotic, colorless glow, pure and formless. When the fire lotus bloomed, attempting to incinerate all, Su Zimo flicked his small flame toward it. The two met in midair, but the explosion everyone expected never came. Instead, they hung in stalemate. At first, the fire lotus blazed fiercely, trying to consume the tiny flame, but it couldn't. Gradually, the lotus weakened, its brilliance dimming. Then, to the horror of everyone watching, the small flame began devouring the great lotus piece by piece. How is this possible? Tian Yiqing gasped. He tried to control the fire lotus, shouting, "Kill!" But the lotus no longer obeyed him. It was completely beyond his control. Before his disbelieving eyes, the tiny flame consumed the entire lotus and grew even larger. Su Zimo flicked his hand, and the flame obediently returned to his palm. Then, with a flick of his finger, he sent it forth again. A massive lotus of devouring fire descended from above. Tian Yiqing screamed, his crimson wings flaring as he tried to flee. But beneath that lotus, his wings disintegrated instantly. The searing heat swept downward, and in terror, Tian Yiqing threw his arms over his head. At that moment, a figure descended from the sky, stepping across the void. It was Feng Buxiu. His robes billowed as he appeared before Tian Yiqing, both hands thrusting forward. A formation activated. The main array of 7 gods Collegium flared to life, glowing brightly as it enveloped him. The Chancellor's spirit pressure burst out like a storm as he forced the devouring lotus to dissolve completely. "Please stay your hand, young Master Su," Feng Buxiu said with a smile. He turned toward the students, his expression hardening. "Disgraceful. Chancellor?" Tian Yiqing said weakly, his tone carrying a hint of grievance. "If I hadn't intervened, you'd already be dead. If this happens again, no one will be able to save you," Feng Buxiu said flatly. "All of you disperse." As the students withdrew in silence, Su Zimo smiled faintly. "Chancellor Feng, quite the plan you had. You've been watching for a while, haven't you?" Feng Buxiu chuckled. "Young Master Su understands my position. I may be the Chancellor, and though having you represent the Academy suppresses dissent for now, it's not a lasting solution. Sometimes," he said, glancing at the retreating students, "it's better to let them learn the hard way. I don't really mind, but it's best to avoid unnecessary trouble," Su Zimo replied. "Of course," Feng Buxiu said with a smile. He turned toward Xie Changlu and took a pill box from his pocket. The box was finely crafted, with 2 dragons coiling in a circular pattern on its lid. "This is a great restoration pill. Take it and your injuries will heal instantly. Just a small token. Don't refuse." "Go on, take it," Su Zimo said with a wave. "He should give it to you." Lifting his gaze, Su Zimo looked around the battlefield, where yellow sand rolled endlessly in the wind. "Chancellor Feng," he said with a faint smile, "this 7 gods Collegium battlefield is rather interesting." "It used to be a real battlefield," Feng Buxiu replied. "It's said that the primal gods and spectral ghosts once waged war here. Since the founding of 7 gods Collegium, it's been used mainly for training. Nothing worth studying anymore." "By the way, Chancellor Feng," Su Zimo asked, "how much do you know about that old man, Old Yang? Why? Did young Master Su find some clue in that book?" Feng Buxiu asked in surprise. "No, not really. I'm just curious about who he really is. He seems to know far too much," Su Zimo said. "Old Yang. I've heard he doesn't actually belong to our academy," Feng Buxiu said after thinking for a moment. "He's lived here since before the 7 gods Collegium was even founded. But he's always kept a low profile, just an ordinary old man. He left decades ago, back when I first became Chancellor." "Why? Did you notice something strange about him?" Su Zimo shook his head slightly. After parting ways with Feng Buxiu, he returned to his courtyard. Raising his right hand, he watched as the flame of Zhurong burned in his palm. This flame was the condensed essence of countless divine insights left by Zhurong himself, the most domineering fire in existence. To wield it, one had to master the secret techniques of the fire god Ancient Tao. The flame blossomed into the shape of a lotus. That was only its initial form, As it continued to devour other flames, it would only grow stronger. He put the flame away. So many things were shrouded in mist now, and he didn't even know where to begin his investigation. He spent the entire day and night cultivating. As dusk deepened, cold winds swept around the house, howling through the windows like something clawing and scraping outside. The next morning, when Su Zimo opened his door, a blast of icy wind struck his face. In just one night, the world outside had turned completely white. Autumn had given way to winter. He warmed his hands, then stepped out into the cold, crunching snow. Feng Buxiu was already waiting outside with two elder companions. Xie Chonglu had arrived early as well. "Young Master Su, we depart today," Feng Buxiu said with a smile. "I've arranged everything with the people from Celestial Sage Academy. The tournament at White Emperor Mountain is about to begin. Going early won't hurt. Let's go." Su Zimo nodded. "Is White Emperor Mountain far from here?" "Not too far," Feng Buxiu said. "With spatial coordinates, we can get there in a few days." Following Feng Buxiu, the group arrived at a solitary snow-covered peak outside the Seven Gods Collegium. The snow fell thick as goose feathers, painting the world in pure white. Feng Buxiu gathered spatial energy in his hands, preparing to open the teleportation coordinates. But suddenly, ripples appeared in the distant void. A figure approached, riding a massive bird through the swirling snow and mist. The creature shimmered like crystal, its entire body radiating icy cold. The rider wore black robes inscribed with white swirling sigils and a gem-studded crown upon his head. As the figure drew near, Feng Buxiu's face darkened. "That's Sima Yan from one of the 3 divisions," one of the elders whispered. "I know," Feng Buxiu said curtly. "Stay alert and follow my lead." Sima Yan brought his icebird to a stop in the air, staring down at Feng Buxiu. "Lord Sima, it's been a while," Feng Buxiu said with a polite smile. "What brings you to Seven Gods Collegium today?" "Spare me the act, Chancellor Feng," Sima Yan replied coldly. "You already know why I'm here." "I'm afraid I don't," Feng Buxiu said, his smile fading. "What's this about Hongyu?" Sima Yan demanded. "The 3 divisions made it clear long ago. No one is allowed to shelter any member of the world-devouring ghost race. Don't tell me your Seven Gods Collegium is unaware of that." "Seven Gods Collegium admits all who wish to learn," Feng Buxiu said evenly. "Do the words of the 3 divisions outweigh our principles of education?" "You're defying the will of the 3 divisions," Sima Yan said, his tone cold. "If it were the decree of the 9 ghost gods, we'd listen," Feng Buxiu countered. "But the 3 divisions' authority doesn't extend into this region. It isn't even part of the demighost region." "In that case," Sima Yan said, "I'll just have to teach you some respect." With those words, sacred power surged from his body. The entire sky erupted in a howling storm. Blizzards raged like an avalanche, swallowing the heavens, blotting out the light. Everything vanished into white. The snow and wind gathered into 2 colossal dragons that roared across the sky. With a thunderous clap of Sima Yan's hand, both dragons dove toward Feng Buxiu. "Lord Sima, don't you think this is going too far?" Feng Buxiu said grimly, retreating quickly. A deafening boom followed. The dragons crashed into the academy's main gate, shattering it to rubble. "Damn it!" Feng Buxiu's face darkened. Sima Yan swung his arms again. The 2 snow dragons wheeled around, howling as they charged once more, freezing everything in their path. Before they even reached him, Feng Buxiu's body was encased in ice. The dragons roared, their massive claws closing in to crush him. Just as the frozen figure was about to shatter, a thunderclap exploded across the sky. Lightning ripped through the snow-filled void, obliterating the 2 dragons in an instant. Sima Yan looked up sharply as the thunder rolled above. Bolts of 9 heavens, profound lightning descended from the clouds, rumbling like an army of gods. He leapt aside just in time, but his icebird screamed and fell, struck by the lightning, plummeting into the endless abyss below the mountain. "Who's there?" Sima Yen demanded coldly, his eyes narrowing. Brother Sima, it's been so long since you visited our Seven Gods Collegium. This is your greeting gift? Came an aged voice from the mist. Thunder flickered once more, illuminating a figure walking slowly through the fog. It was an old man with a handlebar mustache, wearing a loose purple robe that dragged across the snow. He held a wind thunder spike in one hand, his white hair disheveled and fluttering in the winter wind. Thunder Snake, you're still alive, Sima Yen said with a frown. If you're not dead, how could I have the nerve to die? The old man named Thunder Snake replied with a faint smile. On his purple robe, streaks of violet lightning slithered like living serpents. The arcs of electricity didn't appear very powerful, but their presence made the air tremble. They carried a terrifying energy hidden beneath the surface. I didn't expect you to be living within the Seven Gods Collegium, Sima Yen said coldly. Do I need to report to you where I live? Thunder Snake said evenly. For the sake of your 3 divisions, I'll overlook this once. Leave now while you still can. Thunder Snake, you understand the consequences of provoking the 3 divisions, don't you? Sima Yen asked, his eyes narrowing. What, is that a threat? Thunder Snake replied indifferently. I know your 3 divisions are powerful, but the Seven Gods Collegium has a long history. There are still those capable of opposing you. Very well, I'll remember this, Sima Yen said coldly. This matter isn't over. He raised his hand, and the icebird's corpse that had fallen into the ravine suddenly trembled and rose again. With a piercing screech, the icebird's wings spread wide, and it ascended into the sky once more. Sima Yen stepped onto its back and slowly disappeared into the void. He's far too arrogant, one of the elders muttered. He really thinks the name of the 3 divisions alone can make us bow our heads? The 3 divisions cannot act with impunity, another said. And this is no sea region, we're not under their authority. The group exchanged a few remarks, but Su Zimo could tell that both Thunder Snake and Feng Buxiu wore troubled expressions. Despite their composure, worry shadowed their faces. Clearly, the 3 divisions were not to be taken lightly. Young Master Su, let's go, Feng Buxiu said after taking a deep breath. Be extremely careful, Thunder Snake warned. He gave Su Zimo a final look before his figure slowly faded into the void. Feng Buxiu once again channeled spatial power, opening the teleportation gate. The 5 of them stepped through together. Within the spatial passage, Feng Buxiu took out several sheets of parchment and handed them to Su Zimo. Glancing at them, Su Zimo realized they contained information about the opponents in the upcoming tournament. You'll want to pay special attention to this one, the Desolate Temple, Feng Buxiu said. According to our intelligence, their current prodigy is the reincarnation of the Wrathful Bodhisattva. His name is Wrathful Emperor. 18 days ago, he single-handedly stormed Primal Monastery. The temple's 18 guardian monks were all defeated with a single strike. Even their patriarch could not detain him. It's said he resonated with one of the temple's bodhisattvas, merging himself with divine wrath. His strength is extraordinary. And then there's Crimson Soaring Emperor from Martial Blade Collegium, Feng Buxiu continued. He has already declared his imperial title, and it has been acknowledged. Acknowledged? Su Zimo asked, puzzled. You don't know? Feng Buxiu replied. In this world, every Saint Sovereign and Grand Emperor must have their titles tested and approved. If recognized, heaven and earth themselves respond, spiritual rain descends, celestial omens resound, and all creation bears witness. That is how the title of a Grand Emperor is sanctified, honored by both mortals and gods alike. I see, Su Zimo nodded. Be cautious. The 5 great sects and the 2 other academies all have formidable contenders, Feng Buxiu said gravely. What about the Ghost God Collegium? Su Zimo asked. Didn't Hong Yu already scare all their so-called 9 ghost princes into submission? The so-called 9 ghost princes are merely creations of the academy itself, hardly worth mentioning, Feng Buxiu said disdainfully. But the 9 ghost gods themselves certainly have chosen successors. It's likely their personally trained disciples will participate this time. If the ghost gods train their own heirs, why does the academy still create its own 9 ghost princes? Su Zimo asked. Survival of the fittest, Feng Buxiu said simply. Competition breeds progress. Su Zimo nodded slightly in understanding. This competition will be held on White Emperor Mountain? He asked. In White Emperor City, Feng Buxiu corrected. The contest will be overseen and judged by the Chu Heavenly Clan. They have the final say. What's their background? Su Zimo asked curiously. Their ancestor, Chu Kuangren, was a close friend of the White Emperor, Feng Buxiu explained. When the White Emperor departed, he entrusted both the mountain and the city to the Chu Heavenly Clan. Though the Chu Heavenly Clan is powerful, they can't compare to the Great Sex. Still, out of respect for Chu Kuangren, no one dares defy them. It's said that Chu Kuangren still resides within the Chu Heavenly Clan to this day. I see, Su Zimo said thoughtfully, realizing this journey would not be a simple one. Ghost God Heaven was nothing like mortal Ascension Heaven. There were far too many powerful beings here, many capable of standing against him. Yet Su Zimo felt no fear. The road ahead might be long and thorny, but that only made it more interesting. After all, what fun was there in a path without challenge? All true powerhouses walk alone. After several days within the spatial passage, a flash of white light appeared before them. The portal opened, and the group stepped out into an enormous plaza. However, this plaza was not within a city, it sat atop a towering mountain peak. As soon as they arrived, countless figures appeared around them. White Emperor City was one of the largest in the Halfgrave region, so the bustling crowds were unsurprising. Noise filled the air immediately as the crowd began to chatter. Look, Feng Buxiu said, pointing. That is White Emperor City, and over there is White Emperor Mountain. It was clear he was familiar with the area. Su Zimo looked toward the distance, where a massive city floated in midair. The city stretched beyond sight, vast, magnificent, and awe-inspiring, with a surreal, almost otherworldly aura. Its endless walls twisted like coiling dragons, their heads and tails vanishing into the distant horizon. Millions of towering spires pierced the clouds, and celestial springs flowed through the streets. Heavenly lights flickered across the heavens above, bathing the city in mystery and divinity. Turning his gaze toward White Emperor Mountain, Su Zimo saw a towering peak veiled in mist. Some unseen force shrouded it completely. No matter how hard he tried, he could not see through. A line of poetry came to his mind. Because I dwell within the mountain, I cannot see its true face. Come, Feng Buxiu said with a smile. The scenery of White Emperor Mountain can only be appreciated from within, not from without. He led the group down the mountain path, which was smooth and well-crafted, clearly built by expert hands. After some time, they reached the gates of White Emperor City. The city gates were grand and imposing, but what drew even more attention was the monumental stone stele standing before them. Upon it was carved a poem. I am Madman Chu, singing to mock immortals and gods. Sword of madness in hand, I take my leave from White Emperor City. The poem seemed to radiate madness and defiance, as though carved not by a hand but by a soul overflowing with passion. Its aura was so overwhelming that no one dared gaze upon it for long. Let's go. Feng Buxiu's voice came from the side. Su Zimo drew back his gaze from the stone stele, his thoughts returning to the present. I wonder what kind of man this Chu Kuangren really was, he murmured. Some say he was a true man of greatness, others that he was a madman, Feng Buxiu replied. But regardless of what people call him, Chu Kuangren was one of those rare beings worthy of eternal praise. Just as they reached the city gate, a group of people approached from the opposite direction. Well, if it isn't Chancellor Feng himself leading the team this time, a mocking voice called out. The newcomers all wore long gray robes. Each carried a quiver of arrows strapped to their backs, the shafts and feathers gleaming in a variety of colors. Their auras were sharp and cutting, like drawn blades. Every one of their faces was hidden, leaving only a pair of eyes visible, cold, bright, and piercing like arrows. Meeting their gaze felt like being stabbed by 1,000 needles, unbearable and oppressive. The martial blade collegium, Feng Buxiu murmured quietly to Su Zimo. Then he looked up with a polite smile. Chancellor Lu, it's been a long time. You're personally leading your team as well, I see. Of course, Lu said with an easy smile. This competition is too important to entrust to others. I also heard that your academy's Hong Yu was killed at the Ghost God Collegium not long ago. Tell me, who else do you have left to compete? The smug expression on Lu's face made Feng Buxiu frown slightly. That's not something Chancellor Lu needs to concern himself with. Once we're on stage, the results will speak for themselves. Lu chuckled and clapped Feng Buxiu's shoulder. Don't take it to heart, old friend. We'll settle things in the arena. He waved his hand, and his group began to pass by. As they brushed shoulders, Feng Buxiu's eyes suddenly sharpened, focusing on one particular figure among them. It was a young man wrapped entirely in bandages beneath a black robe. The quiver on his back held arrows unlike the others. Each arrowhead was curved like a sickle, glinting with a dark, metallic sheen. His robe had two long, wing-like strips of cloth that hung down before him. When he moved, those cloths fluttered and sliced through the air, leaving faint tears in the fabric of space itself. The aura surrounding him was heavy and overwhelming, power compressed to a frightening degree. Crimson Soaring Emperor, Feng Buxiu said grimly once the man's figure had vanished into the distance. Turning to Su Zimo, he asked, "What do you think of him?" "Can't say," Su Zimo said with a faint smile. "Not until we've exchanged blows. Let's go." Into the city, Feng Buxiu sighed, turning to lead the way. But then his body froze. Every hair on his body stood on end as an overwhelming sense of danger washed over him. He couldn't even move, his muscles locked tight, his breath caught in his chest. Something dreadful was coming from behind. Su Zimo frowned, turning sharply. A black streak of light shot through the air toward them. At first, it looked like an arrow, but in an instant, it transformed into a strange beast. The creature's body was black and white, long and slender like a giraffe's, its neck over a meter in length. Most striking of all was the horn atop its head, over 10 meters long, while a pair of wings spread out, gleaming like blades of light as it dove toward Su Zimo. Su Zimo's eyes narrowed. Spiritual energy surged through him as he stepped forward, the ground cracking open beneath his feet. He reached out with his right hand, catching the arrow beast squarely in his palm. The arrow struggled violently, erupting with destructive energy that tore at the surrounding void, distorting space itself. But Su Zimo's grip did not falter. His fingers tightened, refusing to let go. Gradually, the force within the arrow weakened until, with a faint flicker, it dissolved into a streak of light and vanished completely. The suffocating pressure dissipated. Feng Buxiu finally regained his movement and turned around, face dark with anger. "Lu Xiang," he shouted at the group from Martial Blade Collegium. "Are you trying to start a war?" "Chancellor Feng, don't misunderstand," said a young man holding a bow, grinning wickedly. "That arrow was mine. It has nothing to do with the academy." "Who are you?" Feng Buxiu asked coldly, though he already knew the answer. "I am Crimson Soaring Emperor," the youth said with a laugh. "An insignificant name. Perhaps Chancellor Feng hasn't heard of it?" "How could I not?" Feng Buxiu snapped. "Crimson Soaring Emperor, the Grand Emperor whose title was acknowledged by heaven and earth itself. Your name echoes throughout Ghost God Heaven. I have long heard of your renown. But tell me, Crimson Soaring Emperor, what is the meaning of this?" "Just a bit of friendly sparring," Crimson Soaring Emperor replied with a smile. "Friendly sparring?" Feng Buxiu said icily. "That's not what it looked like. I merely saw that this fellow Taoist here had an extraordinary presence and thought to test him a little," Crimson Soaring Emperor said, glancing at Su Zimo. "You don't mind, do you?" "I do," Su Zimo said flatly, drawing his blade Shadow Tyrant. "I mind very much. Since I've taken your arrow, it's only fair you take my blade." "Sure. No problem," Crimson Soaring Emperor said with a smirk. Su Zimo raised his weapon over his shoulder. Endless power of faith surged through him as his eyes aligned perfectly with the blade's edge. Kill! He swung down in a single stroke. Infinite blade intent erupted like a tidal wave, sweeping across the land. The power of samsara and infernal energy intertwined within the slash, splitting the ground beneath their feet into a web of fissures. Though Su Zimo hadn't used his full strength, the force of his strike was immense. The ease on Crimson Soaring Emperor's face vanished. He drew his bow, the string creaking as it stretched nearly a full meter. Thrum, thrum, thrum. The sound reverberated sharply through the air. When the bow reached its full arc, round as a crescent moon, he loosed the arrow. It transformed into a ferocious Crimson Soaring Emperor beast once more, hurling itself into the oncoming blade energy. A deafening boom split the air. Fire and shockwaves exploded outward. The earth shook violently, and a storm of dust and debris filled the sky. Within that cloud, the mournful cry of Crimson Soaring Emperor rang out, followed by the roar of blade energy tearing through the air. Crimson Soaring Emperor frowned and stepped back, twisting his body just in time to avoid the slash. The blade crashed into the ground, carving a massive fissure at his feet. His aura surged stronger than before, but though he was uninjured, he had taken a step back first. That alone meant defeat. It wasn't a serious wound, but the humiliation was far worse. As the dust finally settled, Crimson Soaring Emperor's expression darkened. He reached for his quiver again, but a hand stopped him. "Not here," said Chancellor Lu, shaking his head. "This isn't the place for battle." Crimson Soaring Emperor turned to him, silent for a moment. "What's wrong?" Su Zimo asked calmly. "Still want to fight?" "There will be another opportunity," Crimson Soaring Emperor said quietly. With a wave of his hand, he turned and strode away. Since becoming a Grand Emperor, he had never suffered such humiliation. "Chancellor Feng, until next time," Lu Xiang said coldly before following. "Until next time," Feng Buxiu replied with a hearty laugh. When they were gone, he turned to Su Zimo, grinning. "Young Master Su, I like your temperament. Unyielding, vengeful, never backing down." "Why should I?" Su Zimo asked, puzzled. "He was a weakling. Why would I need to tolerate him?" Hearing Su Zimo's words, Feng Buxiu was taken aback for a moment, then let out a soft laugh. "Young Master Su speaks reason. Come on, let's head into the city," Su Zimo said with a nod, stepping forward first toward the city gates. Xia Chonglu and the others quickly followed behind. Once they entered the city, the bustling prosperity of White Emperor City washed over them. The streets were crowded with people, the air thick with the mingled clamor of footsteps, chatter, and vendors calling out their wares. The 5 great sects and the 3 major academies had gathered here for the upcoming competition. People from every direction of the realm had come, all eager to witness the top battle among the younger generation. "Have you heard? Dragon Demon God Realm and Sinful Abyss God Realm are already here." The moment they met, they clashed. "What happened?" someone asked curiously. "Why would they fight?" "You must not know, the Dragon Demon God Realm and Sinful Abyss God Realm have been enemies since ancient times. Their hatred runs deep, a grudge passed down through the ages. They're like fire and water, can't be in the same room without trying to kill each other. I heard that this time, Dragon Demon God Realm's Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth and Sinful Abyss God Realm's Ghost Prince came to blows. They nearly demolished the Insect Cultivator Tower in their fight. And the true immortal Insect Cultivator just let them run wild? Of course not. It was only when true immortal Insect Cultivator intervened that things finally calmed down. But with so many great powers gathered in White Emperor City, and no single faction in charge, there are bound to be more conflicts brewing. Everyone would do well to keep their heads down these days. Don't offend any strangers. All around them, in the streets and tea houses, passers-by and travelers gossiped animatedly, their voices filled with excitement and awe. Su Zimo found it all rather interesting. "Young Master Su, we should head directly to the Chu residence," Feng Buxiu suggested. Since the Chu Heavenly Clan is hosting this year's competition, they're in charge of all arrangements. If you'd like to explore the city, you can do so after we're settled. What is it about White Emperor Mountain that draws so many people here? Su Zimo asked with a faint smile. To tell you the truth, Feng Buxiu replied, there's a long-standing legend about this place. It said that before the White Emperor left this world, he declared that his inheritance would remain here. And you must understand, the White Emperor was no ordinary figure. Even among Saint Sovereigns, he was one of the mightiest. His inheritance has always been a dream beyond reach. Every 10 years, when White Emperor Mountain opens, countless people rush in regardless of danger or outcome, just in case they're lucky enough to find something. Even Grand Emperors and Saint Sovereigns cannot resist such a temptation. Su Zimo nodded slightly. Just as Grand Emperors had 5 distinct stages, so too were there vast differences among Saint Sovereigns. If the inheritance is that important, Su Zimo asked, why would the Chu Heavenly Clan share it with others? They don't want to, Feng Buxiu replied with a faint smile. But tell me, do you think the Chu Heavenly Clan alone could possibly defend such a treasure? They made it a shared event out of necessity. In return, the Chu Heavenly Clan receives 3 guaranteed slots in the trial every year, without having to compete. Su Zimo nodded again, understanding completely. Led by Feng Buxiu, the group made their way toward the Chu Heavenly Clan estate. As one of the most powerful and renowned families in White Emperor City, the Chu Heavenly Clan's residence was easy to find, located right at the heart of the city's most prosperous district. The Chu residence stretched across half a block, grand and imposing. Throughout the city, from weapons shops to pill stores, from merchant guilds to trade halls, the Chu Heavenly Clan had their influence everywhere. They had a hand in nearly everything. When they arrived at the gates, the walls of the mansion were made of blue bricks and black tiles, exuding an aura of restrained majesty. 2 large red lanterns hung on either side, each above a small sculpture of a deer. On a dark plaque above the gate, faint flowing light shimmered across the surface of what was known as the Nameless Tablet. The massive bronze doors were open inward, but there were no guards in sight, only an invisible barrier of air sealing the entrance. Feng Buxiu stepped forward, pulling a token from his sleeve. He tossed it into the invisible barrier, where it disappeared. Then he called out loudly, Feng Buxiu, Chancellor of the 7 Gods Collegium, here by invitation to attend the White Emperor Mountain Trials. As his voice faded, the air barrier dissolved instantly. A hearty laugh rang out from within. Chancellor Feng, you've come from afar, and I failed to greet you sooner. Please forgive the oversight. A figure stepped out, a man wearing a tall official's hat and a colorful silk robe. He had a pair of small, beady eyes beneath thick brows, and a mustache shaped like the character for 8. When he smiled, there was a slyness about him that was hard to miss. So it's Butler Chu, Feng Buxiu said with a polite smile. We'll follow the host's lead then. Please arrange as you see fit. Of course, this way, Chancellor Feng, Butler Chu said cheerfully, stepping aside to lead the way. Feng Buxiu and Su Zimo walked side by side as they entered the Chu residence. Once inside, they were greeted by a breathtaking sight. A massive river flowed through the estate, cutting across nearly half of White Emperor City and running directly beneath the Chu Heavenly Clan grounds. White Emperor City itself floated in the void, so this river was not of the mortal realm, but one that cascaded down from the 9th heaven. Who else has arrived? Feng Buxiu asked. Almost everyone, Butler Chu replied with a smile. Only the Northern Hills delegation has yet to arrive. The Patriarch is hosting a banquet in the Hall of Heroes. Please, come with me. Following Butler Chu's lead, they passed through winding corridors, gardens, and elegant pavilions. The Chu estate was vast beyond measure. As they stepped out from a covered walkway, a small girl suddenly ran out from a nearby courtyard. Her skin was pale as carved jade, and she held a small doll in her hands. Uncle Chu, come play with me, she pleaded sweetly. But when the group turned to look at her, they froze. Her face was ghostly white, completely devoid of blood, and there was something eerie in her expression. "Miss, come back at once." An old woman hurried out from the courtyard, scooping the girl into her arms. "My apologies, honored guests," she said quickly. A fleeting shadow of sorrow crossed Butler Chu's eyes, but he merely waved a hand dismissively and continued forward. Following him through several more corridors, they finally arrived at the so-called Hall of Heroes. The hall was already filled with guests. Serving girls moved gracefully between the tables, bearing trays of exquisite dishes. Music drifted through the air, accompanied by the soft, rhythmic steps of dancing girls. As they entered, Su Zimo looked up toward the main seat. A middle-aged man in green robes sat there. He was clearly the master of the Chu heavenly clan. On either side below him, several groups sat gathered, each from different factions. Su Zimo immediately recognized the Dragon Demon God realm. They were a group of powerful beings with dragon horns upon their heads and dark, demonic energy emanating from their bodies. Not quite human, but immensely strong and intimidating. Nearby sat members of the Desolate Temple, each one bald, with a strange, unsettling aura about them. They resembled monks, yet instead of rosaries, they wore necklaces of skulls. Another group came from the Compassion Temple. They looked like true ascetic monks, sitting upright and unmoving. No matter how enchanting the dancers before them were, they did not spare them a glance. Only one young monk snuck a few peeks, and was immediately smacked several times by his elder, leaving him too frightened to lift his head again. At the center of the hall, two women performed, one dressed in red, dancing gracefully, the other in blue, playing the zither, her melody echoing softly through the grand hall. The woman in red danced like a dream, while the woman in blue played the zither like a mirage. Their performance complemented one another perfectly. The melody lingered in the air as if it might echo for 3 days, enchanting and unreal. "Chancellor Feng, I've been waiting for you," said Chu Feiyang, the master of the Chu heavenly clan, as he rose from his seat with a warm smile. "You've come a long way, please take your place." When Feng Buxiu and his group entered the hall, several factions rose in greeting, such as the Compassion Temple and Sinful Abyss God Realm, to show their courtesy. Others, however, paid them no attention. Among them were the Dragon Demon God Realm and the Desolate Temple, especially the Ghost God Collegium. Su Zimo spotted a familiar face, Wu Daozi, the Academy's chancellor. Beside him sat a woman dressed in a tight, form-fitting robe. Her black hair fell like a waterfall over her shoulders. Her eyes were deep and black, and she drank quietly from a cup of wine, clearly the student chosen to compete on behalf of the Ghost God Collegium this year. When Wu Daozi noticed Su Zimo, he gave a heavy, disdainful snort. At Chu Feiyang's invitation, the Seven Gods Collegium party took their seats. Not long after, the people from Martial Blade Collegium entered as well. Crimson Soaring Emperor glanced toward Su Zimo and made a throat-slitting gesture, his expression full of arrogance. Su Zimo smiled faintly, tapping his finger twice against the table. Thump, thump. "If you'd like, we can skip the tournament," he said calmly. "I can send you to your death right now. Gentlemen, please." Chu Feiyang quickly stepped forward, trying to ease the tension before things spiraled out of control. He drew a deep breath. These factions were all sworn enemies to one another. Dragon Demon God Realm and Sinful Abyss God Realm had just been pacified, and now the Seven Gods Collegium's arrival threatened to stir chaos all over again. "My friends," Chu Feiyang said, "whatever grudges you bear, settle them in the tournament. No one will interfere. But for now, I ask that you give my Chu heavenly clan a little face." Of course, Patriarch Chu. Wu Daozi was the first to speak, his tone sharp. "But when will you explain how this year's White Emperor Mountain trial will be conducted? Everyone's been waiting long enough." Chu Feiyang smiled. "The Northern Hills haven't arrived yet. Once they're here, I'll announce everything together." "The Northern Hills again. They're the only ones missing," someone muttered from below. "A bunch of women. No wonder they can't keep up." Just as the mocking voice fell, hurried footsteps echoed from outside. Butler Chu stumbled into the hall, panting heavily. Patriarch, the Northern Hills have arrived. Then why aren't they being shown in? Chu Feiyong said sharply. I'm afraid. They can't be shown in, Butler Chu replied after a pause. You'd best come and see for yourself. Chu Feiyong frowned and strode out of the hall first, the other factions quickly following behind. The moment they stepped outside, a heavy stench of blood and the musky odor of fox fur filled the air. Everyone looked toward the courtyard ahead. On the ground lay a woman and a massive fox. Both were grievously injured. The woman was pale and disheveled but still alive. The fox, however, was drenched in blood, its 9 tails severed down to one, its fur matted and torn. How could this be? Chu Feiyong whispered in shock. He wasn't the only one. Around him, the gathered powers wore expressions of disbelief and confusion. What's going on? Su Zimo asked quietly, turning to Feng Buxiu. That fox, Feng Buxiu said gravely, is Ji Linglong, the leader of the Northern Hills. She must be so badly wounded that she can no longer maintain her human form. The woman beside her should be their chosen participant this year, Ji Juning. His expression darkened. Ji Linglong was a grand emperor at the very peak of her realm. For her to end up like this, the attacker must have been a saint sovereign. Or a sovereign lord, Su Zimo murmured. Among the 5 stages of the Grand Emperor realm, Yin Yang, Void Turbulent, God Unity, Life Death, and Sovereign Lord, he himself had reached only the 3rd, Divine Connection. There was still a vast gulf to cross. Seeing such a sight made him reflect quietly. Even Grand Emperors, at times, were nothing more than a slightly stronger kind of ant. Quickly! Treat her! Chu Feiyong shouted, waving his hand. Fetch the old saint healer! Butler Chu nodded hurriedly and sprinted off. Meanwhile, Chu Feiyong gathered his spirit energy into his palms, channeling it toward the dying fox. But each time the healing light began to take form, it was violently disrupted, repelled by some mysterious power within her body. It was as if something inside her was fighting back. Chu Feiyong's expression turned grim. Unable to stabilize the fox's wounds, he could only form a protective barrier around the unconscious Ji Juning. Moments later, Butler Chu returned, leading an old man dressed in a pale robe. Old Saint Healer, please take a look, Chu Feiyong said quickly, stepping aside. The elderly man nodded slightly. His hair and beard were pure white, and his calm eyes betrayed his great age. He extended a hand, a soft yellow glow forming in his palm. The light expanded until it enveloped the fox's body completely. The old man's brows furrowed deeply, wrinkles folding together across his forehead. She cannot be saved, he said at last, sighing as he straightened. Is there no way at all? Chu Feiyong asked urgently. There is, the old man said dryly. Go to the Mirage Tide's heaven and bring back her soul. Then I can save her. At those words, the entire courtyard fell silent. The Mirage Tide's heaven, a place even saint sovereigns feared to tread. To go there was to never return. But this girl still has a chance, the old man continued, glancing toward the unconscious Ji Juning. Do you wish to save her? Yes, Chu Feiyong said at once. Save her, and ask what happened to them. The gathered leaders nodded. None of them truly cared about the Northern Hills' survival. A dead clan lord or even a destroyed clan meant little to them. What mattered was who had done this, and whether that power posed a threat to them as well. For the Chu Heavenly clan, the matter was even more urgent. They couldn't afford for anything to jeopardize the tournament. The old Saint Healer flicked his finger. A golden pill burst forth in a beam of light, flying straight into Ji Juning's mouth. In the next instant, her body lifted from the ground, floating in midair. A powerful energy began to surge and twist within her, struggling to expel the dark, invasive force inside her body. What a domineering power, the old man muttered softly. He quickly produced several golden needles connected by threads of shimmering light and directed them into Ji Juning's body. She let out a faint cry and coughed up a mouthful of black blood. Within that black blood, something writhed, trying to burrow into the earth to escape. Stop it! Chu Feiyong shouted. As Shadow Tyranty Thing darted toward the sky, a monk from the Compassion Temple stepped forward. "Seal!" the monk shouted, his voice calm yet commanding. His body glowed like a golden arhat as a massive alms bowl rose into the air. The bowl expanded in the sky, radiating golden light that covered half the heavens before descending to trap the sinister presence below. Just as it was about to close around the entity, a loud bang erupted. Something struck the bowl, shaking it violently. Everyone turned to look. From the void cracked open a string of skull-shaped prayer beads, oozing demonic energy. They clashed head-on with the monk's alms bowl. The monk from Compassion Temple frowned and turned toward the members of the Desolate Temple. "What do you mean by this?" he demanded. "You're interfering with my sealing of this evil being. Don't tell me you intend to side with it?" "To seal such a creature requires the hands of our Desolate Temple," said a fierce young man who looked more like a demon monk than a human. He stepped forward, grinning cruelly. "Compassion Temple can stand aside and watch. Wrathful Emperor, don't go too far," the monk snapped. "And if I do?" Wrathful Emperor sneered. High above, the skull prayer beads shattered the golden bowl, transforming into a cloud of ghostly energy that enveloped the evil entity entirely. The thing struggled frantically, thrashing as it tried to break free, but its efforts were in vain. The skulls contracted, fusing into a beam of black light that shot downward from the sky and fell to the ground. "Wrathful Emperor, you dash!" The monk's face twisted with anger. "Brother Wu, don't lose your temper," said a small, youthful monk beside him. His head smooth and unscarred except for a single small knot. He smiled serenely. "All things are illusion. Fame, conflict, victory. They're no more than wine passing through the gut." "I know," the older monk said through gritted teeth. "But he's gone too far. Since the evil thing has been captured, let's at least see what it is." Chu Feiyong interjected, breaking the tension. Wrathful Emperor released the skull beads, revealing the dark entity trapped inside. It was a massive shadow, round in shape, its distorted face twisted together in a grotesque snarl. "What in the world is that?" someone asked. Even the great sect lords, seasoned and worldly, couldn't identify the creature. Behind the orb-like body trailed a plume of malevolent violet mist. "It's trying to devour my prayer beads," Wrathful Emperor said flatly, his expression darkening as he sensed something unusual. "None of you recognize it?" Chu Feiyong asked, glancing around at the gathered factions. Everyone shook their heads, everyone except the old Saint Healer, who circled the sphere slowly, studying it. His frown deepened with every step. "This thing, it looks like—" He stopped abruptly, his expression tightening. "What is it, Elder?" Chu Feiyong asked quickly. "I'm not sure," the old man said after a pause. "I'll have to check my records." Without another word, he hurried from the hall, leaving everyone staring at one another in confusion. "Let's wait for the Saint Healer's findings," Chu Feiyong finally said with a shrug. "As for the Northern Hills clan lord, I'll send word to their people and let them handle the body themselves." "This girl's waking up," someone called out. Ji Juning coughed weakly, then, supported by several attendants, slowly sat up. Her eyes were unfocused and dazed. After a few moments of silence, something seemed to click in her memory. She suddenly tried to run. "Run, hurry. Don't be afraid. You're safe now," Chu Feiyong said soothingly. "This is White Emperor City." Under their calm reassurances, Ji Juning gradually steadied her breathing. "Can you tell us what happened to you?" Chu Feiyong asked gently. "I don't know," Ji Juning said, shaking her head. "We were ambushed. All the elders were slaughtered. The clan lord fought desperately to protect me." "Who ambushed you?" Chu Feiyong pressed. "I didn't see," she replied. "The darkness swallowed everything. Even the clan lord didn't know what it was." "In that case," Chu Feiyong sighed, "we'll have to wait for the Saint Healer's report." "And the clan lord?" Ji Juning asked faintly. "We did everything we could," Chu Feiyong said softly. "But in the end, only you survived." At those words, Ji Juning's legs gave out, and she collapsed to the ground. What about this evil thing? Wrathful Emperor asked. What will you do with it? Keep it confined in my Chu heavenly clan for now, Chu Feiyang said. Once we learn more, we'll decide what to do. He smiled faintly, trying to lighten the mood. Today's events were unfortunate and disrupted the gathering. Since it's getting late and everyone must be tired from the journey, why don't we all rest early? The assembled guests had their own thoughts but did not object. After all, no one dared wander outside during the night in the ghost god heaven. Su Zimo and Feng Bushou's group were assigned quarters in the northern courtyard. Be careful, young Master Su, Feng Bushou said quietly as they returned to their rooms. I know, Su Zimo replied. I mean, Feng Bushou said, lowering his voice. Be wary of the people who were here today. You suspect them? Su Zimo asked in surprise. It's not suspicion, Feng Bushou said. It's certainty. Do you have proof? Su Zimo asked, frowning. The will of the seven gods, Feng Bushou said cryptically before turning and entering his room. Back in his own quarters, Su Zimo thought for a long while but found nothing unusual. He then began to cultivate. Outside, the night was thick and black, filled with the lingering power of ghosts and gods. He meditated until dawn, when the first pale light touched the sky. When he stepped outside, the gray clouds had lifted, and the Chu household was already bustling with preparations for the tournament. According to custom, today would begin with the White Emperor ceremony. Only after the ritual could they enter the White Emperor Mountain for the final competition. It was an ancient tradition passed down through countless generations. Su Zimo walked through the courtyard to the Hall of Heroes, where many had already gathered, including Ji Juning. She looked much better than the day before. Her beauty was breathtaking. She wore a flowing blue dress adorned with fluttering ribbons that floated around her. Her black hair framed her face in soft disarray, her skin pale and luminous, her eyes bright as moonlight. When she saw Su Zimo, she smiled lightly in greeting. Is everyone here? Chu Feiyang asked, dressed in pristine white robes as he surveyed the crowd. Today we honor the White Emperor. Once his blessing is received, the path to White Emperor Mountain will open, and the final trials may begin. Everyone understands this, yes. Then let's go, someone from Sinful Abyss God Realm said. Dozens of Chu heavenly clan servants appeared, each carrying ritual offerings. The grand procession began to move, marching toward the distant White Emperor Mountain, with the assembled forces following close behind. They passed through the gates of White Emperor City, and from the void ahead, a celestial staircase unfolded before them. Leaving White Emperor City, the heavenly staircase beneath their feet stretched endlessly toward the distant horizon. There were countless steps, densely packed and ascending into the clouds. Standing before it, everyone felt an overwhelming sense of awe, as though they were standing at the very peak of the world. Dozens of servants carried offerings in their hands, standing at the base of the staircase. As the celestial path descended little by little, it aligned perfectly with the earth. Chu Feiyang led the procession downward from the sky, following behind the group of attendants carrying offerings. Walking at the rear were Su Zimo and Feng Bushou. Along the way, Feng Bushou explained, the ritual of worship is the most important ceremony of White Emperor Mountain. To enter the mountain, one must first pay tribute. If anyone angers the White Emperor, then no one will be able to pass. The White Emperor has already departed, hasn't he? How could such a thing still matter? Su Zimo asked curiously. There are many inexplicable things in this world, Feng Bushou replied. We've long suspected that something within White Emperor Mountain still governs it. But we've never found any proof. Then we'll find out once we get there, Su Zimo nodded. After all, he had never seen White Emperor Mountain before, and speculation meant little without first-hand experience. The group left White Emperor City, traveling westward. After walking for about 10 minutes, they arrived at a verdant peak, but advancing any farther was difficult. In front of the mountain stood an ancient stone gate, encircled by walls over 10 meters high, resembling the boundary of an ancient tomb. Though time had aged its surface, The walls stood solid and imposing, exuding an ancient weight. Chu Feiyong walked to the front, knocked twice on the gate, and pushed it open. Inside, the place was overgrown with weeds. Towering pines, thick as giants, rose in the middle of what looked like a vast cemetery. Directly ahead stood a nameless stone stele. Chu Feiyong, 113th generation descendant of the Chu heavenly clan, 38th patriarch of the clan, comes to pay homage to the White Emperor. Chu Feiyong's voice echoed as he placed both hands on the stele. The stele began to distort, twisting the surrounding space along with it. "Offer the tributes," Chu Feiyong commanded. The servants lifted the red cloths covering the trays they carried and cast the offerings into the swirling stele. As more items were thrown in, the distortion deepened, forming a vortex so vast that it seemed bottomless. After dozens of minutes, when every offering had been delivered, Chu Feiyong shouted again, "Everyone, kneel!" He dropped to his knees first, facing the stele. The rest followed, every sect, every academy, even the strongest among them. None dared to remain standing. Amid the crowd of kneeling figures, only Su Zimo stood motionless. Feng Buxiu grew anxious. "Kneel. Don't offend the ritual," he whispered urgently, tugging at Su Zimo's robe. "In my life, there are few I should kneel to," Su Zimo said calmly. "Aside from my parents, neither heaven nor earth deserve my bow." "You," Feng Buxiu sighed helplessly, knowing there was nothing he could say to change his mind. As everyone else bowed, a powerful force erupted from the stele. It surged outward, vast enough to erase everything in its path, sweeping through the void like a tidal wave. The pressure was immense, so much so that everyone instinctively lowered their heads. A fierce wind howled, lifting Su Zimo's black hair around him. "Offend the White Emperor and die!" A furious roar echoed from the void, and in the next moment, an overwhelming force enveloped Su Zimo completely. When his consciousness returned, he found himself standing in a boundless, gray void. Two crimson eyes glared at him from the darkness. Everyone else knelt before the White Emperor. "Why didn't you?" a thunderous voice demanded, reverberating endlessly through the empty space. "Others are others," Su Zimo replied steadily. "I am myself. Why should I kneel? When the White Emperor waged war across the realms, you were not even a child. Should you not bow before your elder?" The voice retorted. "You and I are strangers," Su Zimo said evenly. "How do you know what I was in those days?" As he spoke, he scanned the strange void around him, but its structure was beyond his comprehension. Whatever this space was, it belonged to a power he had yet to encounter. "I'll give you one more chance," the hidden voice warned. "Kneel and repent. Refuse and die." "Try me," Su Zimo said, narrowing his eyes. The moment the words left his mouth, the entire space erupted into chaos. Power surged from every direction, converging before those blood-red eyes. The pressure was apocalyptic, worlds crumbling, the heavens splitting apart. "Boy, will you kneel or not?" the voice thundered again. Su Zimo didn't answer. Instead, his weapon, Shadow Tyrant, burst forth with blinding light. The blade, carrying the will of countless beings, cut through half the void. There was a deafening boom, as though the strike had hit something solid. Then came a yelp. "Ow!" A small figure tumbled out of the air, rubbing its head and backside. Su Zimo looked closer and saw a bald child, 7 or 8 years old, wearing a red belly band. Gold rings adorned his wrists, ankles, and neck. "Humph, a snot-nosed brat," Su Zimo remarked. "You're the snot-nosed one. I'm just not fully matured," the child snapped. "I'm tens of thousands of years old. I'll have you know." "Enough, child. Step back," came a calm, amused voice nearby. "I told you you wouldn't scare him," the new voice said lightly. "I just wanted to spook him a little. He didn't have to hit me that hard," the boy muttered, retreating a few steps. Su Zimo looked up and saw a man in scholar's robes approaching from the distance. The man's robe was covered in ancient, indecipherable symbols. He had a handsome, dignified face, sharp brows, bright eyes. Though his presence exuded no oppressive aura, he somehow felt like the center of the world. "Young man, you're quite impressive," the scholar said with clear admiration. "And you are?" Suzimo asked cautiously. "Here, within White Emperor Mountain, who else do you think I could be?" The man replied. "The White Emperor," Suzimo realized immediately. "Indeed?" The man nodded with a faint smile, acknowledging it. "You're calmer than I expected. And your eyes, they're far more interesting than I imagined." "You haven't left?" Suzimo asked. Suzimo was puzzled. Everyone knew that the White Emperor had once followed the Grand Empress into the final battle, and then vanished completely. Ever since then, White Emperor Mountain had become a masterless place. So seeing the White Emperor again here was enough to surprise him. "This is merely an avatar of mine. There's no need to be shocked," the scholar in a white robe said with a gentle smile. "I am the White Emperor, and yet not truly the White Emperor." "You sought me out for something?" Suzimo asked. "Because I didn't kneel?" "No, no." The scholar shook his head with a laugh. "That was only a test. Those who refuse to kneel, those who possess unyielding pride, are the ones allowed to meet me. The White Emperor left behind his legacy to find an heir. I came for the inheritance, yes, but not to be his successor," Suzimo replied. "And what's so bad about being the White Emperor's successor?" The man in the scholar's robe said with a faint chuckle. "In his era, when he strode across the 9 heavens, his name alone made the heavens tremble. I only want the traceless compass. Nothing else concerns me," Suzimo said calmly. "If you're willing to become the heir, I'll hand over every bit of his inheritance to you," the scholar offered. "Being an heir must come with a price, doesn't it?" Suzimo asked. "Of course," the scholar said, still smiling. "As his successor, you would have to inherit the White Emperor's will." "I have no interest in inheriting your or anyone else's will," Suzimo said, shaking his head. He didn't even bother asking what kind of will it was. "You'd better think carefully," the scholar warned. "If you refuse, you'll be giving up the inheritance entirely, and will have to enter the final battleground, like the others." "Then I'll go to the battleground," Suzimo replied evenly. "Very well. As you wish." The scholar waved his hand, and the void around them began to tremble. A cloud of gray mist enveloped Suzimo, swallowing him completely. After Suzimo disappeared, the young attendant beside the scholar asked, "I thought he was a lot like the White Emperor. Why not try harder to convince him?" "He's nothing like the White Emperor," the scholar said with a soft smile. "The White Emperor understood the world and knew when to stop. But that one, his arrogance runs in his bones. He looks down on everything." "I couldn't see that at all," the attendant muttered. "You just don't know how to read people," the scholar replied, shaking his head. "Still, I do rather admire him. Men like him either achieve immortality or die early. There's no third outcome." The attendant nodded, half understanding. Suzimo's vision pierced through the mist. When his sight cleared, he was back inside the White Emperor's mausoleum. Everyone was gathered around him, staring intently. "What?" Suzimo said, glancing up, and startled everyone around him. "He's awake!" Someone breathed in relief. "Brother Su, what happened just now?" Feng Buxiu asked from the side. "Yeah," Chu Feiyang added. "Your soul left your body. We thought something happened to you." Seeing the expectation in their eyes, Suzimo shrugged. "Nothing happened," he said. "Is young Master Su hiding something?" Wu Daozi from Ghost God Collegium sneered. "Seems like you've discovered something extraordinary." "So what if I am hiding something?" Suzimo smiled. "We're all competitors here. You're not my son. Why would I owe you an explanation? Unless you think you are." "You!" Wu Daozi's face flushed with embarrassment. "Enough," Chu Feiyang said quickly, stepping in to smooth things over. "If young Master Su doesn't wish to say, let's not press him. The battleground is already open. We should all decide our representatives. Ghost God Collegium has already chosen, Wu Daozi said, looking toward the woman beside him in a tight black outfit. 7 kills, it's yours. The woman stretched lazily, her perfect figure drawing every gaze before she nodded. From the desolate temple, wrathful emperor stepped forward without hesitation. It was clear he would represent them. At Primal Monastery, the kindly bald monk was regretfully withdrawn from the selection. From Martial Blade Collegium, it was naturally Crimson Soaring Emperor. From the Dragon Demon God realm came Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth, massive and muscular, his entire body built like that of a giant mammoth. From Sinful Abyss God realm stood the Ghost Prince, cloaked in black and wearing a bamboo hat that shadowed his face, except for the half-revealed cheek branded with the word, Sin. And from the Northern Hill clan, though their patriarch had died, Ji Juning still stood tall. She did not withdraw, she too wanted to fight. Before the wordless stone steel, a giant vortex appeared in midair, radiating a strong suction that pulled at the surrounding space. "Let's go," Su Zimo said as he and the others lined up, stepping forward together into the vortex. As their bodies vanished one after another, Chu Feiyong smiled and said, "Everyone, let's watch together." The vortex slowly dissolved, leaving behind an image suspended in the void, showing the scene within the battleground. The final battleground was not just an empty field for a simple duel. It was the very place where the White Emperor had once fought his greatest enemy. After that enemy's death, his body had become the land itself. The terrain was riddled with deadly dangers. In past competitions, many prodigies had perished before even facing one another. When Su Zimo appeared within the new space, he found himself surrounded by ruins. Broken, crumbling buildings stood scattered across scorched earth. Wisps of smoke curled lazily into the air. As soon as he steadied himself, a faint fragrance drifted toward him, light as jasmine, yet as heated as roses in bloom. Turning, Su Zimo saw Ji Juning standing beside him. She had apparently been transported to the same location. Her soft eyes gazed at him, full of charm. "Fate really does bring us together, doesn't it, my lord?" Ji Juning said with a smile. "You do realize the rule of this battleground is mutual slaughter, right?" Su Zimo replied calmly. "There's no need for you to kill me," Ji Juning said sweetly. "I won't compete against you. In fact, I can help you deal with the others." "Why?" Su Zimo asked. "I'm searching for the one who attacked and killed my people," Ji Juning said, her tone turning cold as her aura shifted. "Your enemy?" Su Zimo recalled what Feng Buxiu had told him earlier. "You suspect it was one of the major factions here." "Exactly. I want to test them to see who's behind it," Ji Juning said. "The ranking itself doesn't matter to me." "That's interesting," Su Zimo said, nodding slightly. "But sorry, I refuse." Why? Ji Juning blinked in surprise, clearly taken aback. "I can't think of a reason for you to refuse. Because I can crush them all myself," Su Zimo said flatly. "Why would I need to join forces with you?" The moment his words fell, the ground beneath them began to shake violently. The ground shook violently, splitting apart as deep cracks spread out from beneath the earth. Su Zimo looked up to see a colossal stone giant emerging from the ruins. Its body was made of charred rock, glowing with rivers of molten magma that burned across its form. Low, rumbling growls echoed from its mouth. "It's a beast formed from a formation," Ji Juning said solemnly. "Shall we work together to take it down?" Su Zimo gave her a brief glance but said nothing. Shadow Tyrant in his hand erupted with a brilliant slash that tore through the world. The dazzling light of his blade illuminated the desolate ruins before it exploded forward in an unstoppable arc. The strike ripped through the ground, carving a bottomless fissure into the earth. The blade's force annihilated everything in its path. The magma giant roared but had no time to react. It was instantly reduced to ashes. "You?" Ji Juning froze, stunned for a moment. "Realizing you're a side character?" Su Zimo chuckled, glancing at her. He stood calmly as a red and gold gemstone appeared where the molten beast had fallen. He reached out and grabbed it, and a glowing number appeared before him. 100. HM? What's this? Su Zimo frowned. Your score, Ji Juning explained. This battleground is like a grand competition. Slaying an opponent earns you points. The one with the highest score in the end wins. She smiled lightly. Of course, if you manage to kill all your opponents, that would also make you number one in a sense. Got it? Su Zimo nodded, then raised his blade toward her. Then that makes you worth some points too. Surely the young master wouldn't be that heartless, Ji Juning said with a faint laugh, though her eyes flickered with caution. If you keep me alive, I can guide you. Kill me and you'll gain only a few points, nothing that will decide the outcome. So you're saying your value outweighs your score? Su Zimo asked. To be frank, Ji Juning said quickly, I possess part of a map of this battleground. You expect me to believe that? Su Zimo said with a faint smirk. It's true. It belonged to a senior from our Northern Hills clan who entered this place in the last generation. He died here, and the map was lost with him. If it's lost, then how is there a map? Su Zimo asked. Our Northern Hills Fox clan has a rule, Ji Juning explained. Before death, every clansman hides their most important belongings within their own pocket realm. If we find his body, I can open that realm and retrieve the map. She paused, then added quickly, and our Fox clan can sense unique scents. Within a certain range, I can detect my senior's presence. Her words came fast. She could feel the killing intent radiating from Su Zimo. This man was far more dangerous than he appeared. You have 3 days, Su Zimo said after a moment of thought. If we don't find the map, you're of no use to me. Fine. Ji Juning nodded slightly. This was far from what she had expected. She had come seeking an alliance, to uncover the truth behind the ambush. But now she was bargaining just to survive. Let's go, Su Zimo said, sheathing his blade as he walked toward the edge of the ruins. They hadn't gone far when the collapsed buildings gave way to a tropical rainforest. Giant banana trees, their broad leaves like massive fans, covered half the sky. The lush green shimmered with humid heat that filled the air. The trunks were thick, their rings visible as though carved by a blade. There's fighting ahead, Su Zimo muttered. Through the mist that cloaked the jungle, he could sense a clash of power. He took a step forward and charged straight into the rainforest. The moment he entered, dizziness hit him. The damp, suffocating heat felt like stepping into a sauna, steam rising from the very earth. These vapors are toxic, Ji Juning warned from behind. After running for 6 or 7 minutes, they reached the source of the battle. The banana grove had been leveled, trunks sliced cleanly in two by blades or weapons. In the middle of the clearing, a blood-red figure was fighting a panda. Su Zimo recognized the man immediately. It was Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth of the Dragon Demon God realm. Now he looked like a demonic bull, muscles bulging, limbs braced against the ground. His robe had transformed into heavy armor, and he wielded a massive hammer that cratered the ground with every swing. His opponent, the panda, wore a straw hat and carried a piece of green bamboo. Despite its round, plump body, it moved with surprising agility, circling the banana trees and easily evading Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth's blows. Stupid bull demon! You can't hit me! You can't hit me! The panda taunted, sticking out its tongue playfully as it dodged. When Su Zimo and Ji Juning appeared, the two combatants finally paused. Well, looks like we've got company, the panda said with a grin. Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth glanced warily at Su Zimo, then said cautiously, Work together? After a pause, he added, That's a bamboo palm panda. Killing it's worth 10,000 points. You two take your time chatting, the panda said, laughing loudly. But Grandpa Panda's not sticking around for this. Sensing the tension, it turned and bolted into the deeper jungle. Neither Su Zimo nor Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth pursued. They stood facing each other instead, their auras intensifying. Kill! Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth roared, the sound like a bull's bellow. His massive horns lowered and he charged forward. Suzumo met the attack head-on, grabbing both horns with his bare hands. The immense force drove him backward step by step, his boots grinding against the soil. "Young Master Su, I'll help," Ji Juning's voice called from the side. 9 purple fox tails unfurled behind her, swirling with spirit energy that filled the air. Each tail stretched 100 meters long, whipping toward Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth to bind him. "Power breaks all," Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth bellowed, his strength surging. He tore through the bindings and lunged, trying to crush Suzumo beneath his charge. But Suzumo twisted midair, flipping onto the bull's back. He seized the demon's horns again as the beast thrashed wildly, shattering banana trees all around them. "Kneel!" Suzumo roared, his right fist slamming down onto the demon's neck. Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth let out a pained howl as his massive body collapsed to the ground, raising clouds of dust. "Get the hell off me!" The bull demon shouted furiously, muscles bulging as he threw Suzumo off. Black demonic mist erupted from his body as his horns lowered again, aiming straight for Suzumo's abdomen. Another explosion erupted with a deafening boom, shattering the sky itself. The bellow of an enraged bull echoed continuously as the shockwaves faded. When the smoke cleared, Suzumo and Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth stood facing each other. Shadow Tyrant was wedged between the bull's twin horns, sparks bursting with each clash. Around them, halos of light pulsed and collided, 2 extreme forces crashing together until they reached their limit. Then a thunderous explosion split them apart once more. Suzumo steadied himself a short distance away, his eyes fixed ahead. "How about we end it here?" Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth asked. "It's not time for the final battle yet." "No need," Suzumo said with a faint smile, shaking his head. Shadow Tyrant flared again with violent energy. "Reckless fool," Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth snorted coldly. He planted his 4 hooves, then leapt high into the air. From a height of hundreds of meters, he came crashing down like a living mountain. Suzumo swung his blade upward. The sharp edge met the bull's horns with explosive force. Bang, 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 each impact shaking the air. "Earth Shield," Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth shouted. Standing upright, his 4 hooves braced like claws, he clashed again and again with Shadow Tyrant. But now that the blade had absorbed the collective will of all beings, its sharpness was beyond imagination. After only a few exchanges, cracks had already formed along Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth's fists. "What a terrifying weapon," Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth said in surprise. As a disciple of the dragon demon god realm, his physical body was gifted beyond measure. With the Earth Shield's protection, few things in the world could wound him, yet this blade had done it easily. Suzumo didn't respond. Instead, he unleashed the Wendao style. Yin and Yang shattered the void itself, the world consumed by boundless blade intent. Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth's eyes sharpened. "Thunderburst style," he roared. Lightning crackled between his horns, faint blue arcs flickering and surging until they gathered into rolling thunder. Each punch and strike carried the destructive power of storms. The two clashed again, their battle turning the entire banana forest for 100 miles into ruins. The tropical air was thick and sweltering, the heat intensified by the sparks from their combat. Soon, the flames spread into a blazing inferno. Their figures fought on amidst the flames, shadows flickering in the blaze. Ji Juning paused nearby, her 9 purple tails rising high into the sky. "Fox enchantment of the northern hills," she called out. Her 9 tails arched upward like cascading waterfalls falling from the Milky Way, glowing with deep violet light and a misty charm. The aura spread, and both Suzumo and Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth were caught within it. Inhaling the violet gas, Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth's body froze for an instant. Suzumo seized the chance. Shadow Tyrant cleaved through the air, its blade breaking through countless barriers and slashing directly into Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth's abdomen with a thunderous boom. The enormous body was sent flying backward. "You dare trick me, you vixen?" Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth roared as he struggled to rise. Young Master Su and I are on the same side, Ji Juning said with a playful smile. You're courting death. A vast surge of black mist erupted above Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth's head, spreading outward like a storm. Within that mist, a massive dragon-like figure began to take shape, a black dragon demon awakening from ancient slumber. It had the body of a divine dragon, pitch-black scales, and blood-red eyes glowing like embers. A dragon's roar split the heavens as it emerged from the mist. It's his true fate, Ji Juning said softly. Behind her, her 9 purple tails trembled, and from them, a colossal 9-tailed fox slowly rose. Its form towered high, reflecting half the sky, its fur shimmering as it licked its tails, casting a bewitching gaze toward Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth. Su Zimo said nothing. He activated his hell-suppressing demon physique, demonic energy surging wildly until it formed a dense cloud above him. From his face down to his neck, purple markings spread, while the black demonic aura infused itself into Shadow Tyrant. Kill! Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth roared, and both he and the dragon demon charged forward together. Su Zimo stepped into the air, landing on the dragon demon's head mid-charge. With a swift motion, he spun around and brought his blade down hard. The dragon demon howled, twisting violently in midair. Ji Juning spread her hands, sending her enormous northern fox leaping forward. It pinned the dragon demon down with its claws. Courting death, Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth bellowed. The dragon demon reared up, tossing the fox away. But before it could advance again, the heaven-shattering giant behind Su Zimo took a massive step forward and kicked the dragon demon squarely in the abdomen, slamming it into the ground. The dragon demon roared furiously, struggling to rise even as the giant pressed it down. Though the giant forced it to the ground, the dragon demon's power surged, flipping the giant over. The demon's body erupted with lightning as its 8 claws tore at the giant's form. Seeing this, Su Zimo frowned slightly. He ignited the flame of Zhurong in his right hand and flicked it into the body of the giant. The surrounding spirit energy began to spiral. The heaven-shattering giant bellowed and transformed into a giant of raging flames. It punched downward, the flame of Zhurong burning through everything it touched, setting the dragon demon ablaze. Dragon demon, shatter divine desolation, Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth roared. Power surged through the dragon demon. From its open maw, a dark beam of destructive force condensed and fired. The explosion shook the heavens. The black beam clashed with the fire giant's lotus of flame. The two forces collided violently, neither yielding. Well now, quite the spectacle. A soft voice suddenly chuckled nearby. Both combatants looked up to see a gray-robed monk approaching with calm steps. Su Zimo frowned slightly. It was Grand Emperor Hidden Sky, the contestant from Primal Monastery. Grand Emperor Hidden Sky, you want to interfere too? Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth asked coldly. The little monk was only passing through. Grand Emperor Hidden Sky replied with a gentle smile. I thought I'd stop by for a look. Then stay out of it. Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth snapped. The Emperor's temper is fierce, Grand Emperor Hidden Sky said lightly. But they clearly have the advantage. Why not join forces with me? Fine. We'll kill him first, Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth said. Grand Emperor Hidden Sky stepped forward, but Ji Juning moved to block his way. The foxes of the northern hills are quite interesting, Grand Emperor Hidden Sky said with a chuckle. And the ascetics of Primal Monastery are quite something as well, Ji Juning replied coolly. Though if I recall correctly, your uncle master, Grand Emperor Hidden Star, fell to our matriarch's charms. Grand Emperor Hidden Sky's eyes narrowed slightly. Though he still smiled, the air around them began to freeze. The prayer beads in his hands spun rapidly. The road of the ascetic is long and full of hardship, Grand Emperor Hidden Sky said calmly, palms together. Falling along the way is only natural. Then, little monk, would you like to try it yourself? Ji Juning teased with a sly smile, lifting her skirt slightly. A taste of my body, it's worth dying for. Lust is poison. One mustn't taste it Mustn't. Grand Emperor Hidden Sky said quickly, stepping back. Behind his head, glowing halos appeared one after another, radiating divine light like a descending arhat. Clouds of auspicious mist swirled around him. With a wave of his hand, he hurled his prayer beads into the air. They expanded thousands of times in size, spinning as faint chanting echoed within them. The enormous beads turned, pressing toward the northern fox behind Ji Juning. But Ji Juning was not to be outdone. The fox roared, spewing a stream of prismatic light that collided with the beads. The two clashed fiercely. Su Zimo turned his gaze back to Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth. The fiery giant and the dragon demon were locked in brutal combat. The flame of Zhurong burned endlessly. Its flames could devour all, impossible to extinguish. The dragon demon was forced back again and again. Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth grew anxious, surging with imperial might that spread across the land. "Dragon demon strangulation," he roared. His right hand gathered endless spirit energy, demonic power boiling to the surface. A gate seemed to open above the dragon demon's head, and torrents of dark energy poured into its body. The dragon demon's blood-red maw widened as its body swelled larger still. Black lightning coursed along its limbs as it coiled around the fiery giant, crushing it with immense force. It raised its head and bit down toward the giant's head, but before it could strike, Su Zimo invoked Heaven-Earth Dharma Codex and the God-Devil creation Atlas together. With the hell-suppressing demon physique as the base, he became like a true God-Devil descending upon the mortal realm. In an instant, he crossed the distance, appearing behind the dragon demon. The massive demonic phantom behind him roared and seized the dragon demon by the neck, wrenching it backward and slamming it to the ground. "Damn it!" Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth bellowed, swinging a massive hammer at him. Su Zimo met it head-on, catching the blow with one hand and hurling Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth to the ground. Both the dragon demon and its master fell together. Su Zimo grabbed them by their necks, lifted them high, and slammed them down again with overwhelming force. Behind him, the fiery giant spat out more flames of Zhurong. Lotus after lotus of fire descended, engulfing them both. Su Zimo stepped back, leaving Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth and his dragon demon trapped in the sea of fire. Explosions thundered as the flame of Zhurong devoured everything. The earth burned. The world fell silent. Nothing could survive the heat. Even Ji Juning and Grand Emperor Hidden Sky were startled. "What fierce flames!" Grand Emperor Hidden Sky said, retreating quickly with a grave expression. Screams echoed from within the inferno. When the fire finally subsided, the banana forest was gone, reduced to ash. At the center of the scorched land, both the dragon demon and Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth had vanished. "Are they dead?" Ji Juning asked with a frown. "No," Su Zimo said, shaking his head. At once, the surrounding space began to tremble. A massive black hand tore through the void nearby. The rift widened, and from within crawled an enormous creature, millions of miles large. It resembled the dragon demon, but its form had evolved. Its 8 claws had fused into 4 massive limbs, and its body had grown even larger. On its back bulged clusters of spherical growths, glowing crimson from within. Its head was sharp and narrow, with a single cyan horn protruding from its forehead. It roared, the sound so powerful it shattered the surrounding space. "Well, well," Grand Emperor Hidden Sky said with a laugh. "I've long heard that this generation's dragon demon disciple carries the blood of the dragon demon god. Seems the rumors were true. Grand Emperor Hidden Sky, didn't you agree to join forces? Why stand idle now?" The monster growled. Its voice was identical to Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth's. "You can see for yourself," Grand Emperor Hidden Sky said with a weary smile. "That fox woman has me occupied. If you really wanted to help, a fox couldn't stop you. You're playing games with me," the monster accused. "You underestimate her," Grand Emperor Hidden Sky said calmly. "But if you don't trust me, then our alliance is void." "Useless," Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth's voice thundered from within the creature. I'll kill them myself. He stomped, splitting the ground into countless cracks. The earth trembled violently. The monster swung its tail, a whip of armored scales that swept across tens of thousands of miles. Su Zimo met it head-on with his blade, but the impact sent a shockwave that hurled him backward. Impressive, Grand Emperor Hidden Sky said with a laugh. The dragon demon god realm has always valued strength. The first dragon demon god himself proved his Tao through power. You truly carry his spirit. Shut your mouth, Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth said coldly. He continued to focus his attacks on Su Zimo and Ji Jining, avoiding Grand Emperor Hidden Sky, for even he knew the monk was dangerous. I can charm him, Ji Jining said quickly to Su Zimo as the creature's tail swept past. Our fox enchantments never fail. You strike the killing blow. No need, Su Zimo replied calmly. With two god scriptures empowering him, Shadow Tyrant glowed with the light of countless prayers of faith, its size expanding 1,000-fold. The towering giant behind him raised the enormous blade, infernal aura flooding the battlefield. He unleashed one of the 10 forms of demon, terrestrial demon, all who bring disaster. As Su Zimo advanced, the sky itself darkened, thick with demonic clouds. Boundless blade intent filled the world. He gripped the blade with both hands, stepped forward, and transformed into a streak of lightning. In the next instant, he appeared before the monstrous dragon demon. He swung down with all his might. Thunder, wind, and rain gathered, and vast infernal energy surged like a storm across 30 million miles. With a deafening explosion, Shadow Tyrant cleaved into the creature's back. The monster howled in agony, its slime-covered jaws gaping wide as it roared. It wrapped its arms around Su Zimo, trying to crush him as it staggered backward. Su Zimo braced himself, slamming his feet into the ground, lowering his center of gravity. Then he raised Shadow Tyrant high overhead. Lightning from the heavens struck the blade, charging it with divine power. He brought it down in one unstoppable strike. That single blow pierced straight through the monster's body. As Shadow Tyrant pierced through everything, the monster let out a painful roar. The blade intent on Shadow Tyrant grew even stronger. An endless surge of destructive force exploded from within, relentlessly tearing apart the creature's organs. The screams echoed across heaven and earth. Su Zimo released Shadow Tyrant, grabbed the monster's shoulders with both hands, and violently tore it off his body. Then, with a mighty over-the-shoulder throw, he slammed the creature backward into the ground. Another deafening boom followed. Dust billowed, the earth quaked, and before the monster could react, Su Zimo once again drew Shadow Tyrant. Both hands gripped the long blade tightly. The demonic energy on the weapon fused with the flames of Zhurong, and he slashed viciously toward the monster's head. Stop! I surrender! Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth's voice came from within the monster's body. Idiot! This is a battle of life and death, not child's play, Su Zimo said calmly, smiling faintly. What meaning is there in surrendering? Before Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth could respond, Su Zimo's blade had already fallen. A pained roar rang out, and the stench of blood filled the air, dyeing half the ground red. Su Zimo did not stop there. He swung Shadow Tyrant again and again, more than a dozen times, until the enormous dragon demon body finally exploded apart. This entire dimension trembled violently. Su Zimo retreated a few steps, gazing into the explosion's center. When the dust settled, a bottomless crater appeared in the ground. Inside, Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth was crawling out, coughing heavily, his clothes in tatters, his flesh mangled. Even the two bull-like horns on his head were broken in half. Just as he managed to climb out of the pit, a sharp burst of blade energy from Shadow Tyrant pressed coldly against his neck. Murderous intent filled the air, a suffocating sense of death. Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth took a deep breath, looking at Su Zimo. Spare me. You can name any price. I'm not interested, Su Zimo said, shaking his head. Even if you gave me the entire dragon demon god realm, it would mean nothing. No sooner had he spoken than the seemingly weakened Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth suddenly lunged forward. D. Several thin white needles appeared in his hand, glowing faintly. The moment they appeared, they vanished into the air, sealing the surrounding space. "That's the Dragon Demon Immortal Sealing Formation," said Grand Emperor Hidden Sky, chuckling softly nearby. "It draws upon one's life force to activate the twin seals of dragon and demon." "A futile struggle," Ji Juning said coolly. "He's not struggling in vain," Grand Emperor Hidden Sky replied with a smile. "This formation isn't meant to kill, but to trap its target, giving him a chance to flee." Su Zimo turned his head, seeing the void around him sealed tight, as if dragon demon power was descending from the heavens to suppress him. Meanwhile, Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth was tearing open space, trying to escape. "To display such a petty trick before me, how laughable," Su Zimo said indifferently. With a swing of his blade, he ripped the void apart. The white needles snapped instantly, and the formation collapsed. The overwhelming blade force shattered the air, and Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth's body was flung out violently. Without hesitation, Su Zimo struck again, the blade falling mercilessly and cleaving Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth's body in two, destroying even his soul. "The Dragon Demon God Realm will never forgive you," Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth's fading god soul screamed as it tried to resist the engulfing blade aura. "You still don't understand the nature of this battleground," Su Zimo replied calmly. "What can your sect possibly do to me?" Meanwhile, back at the White Emperor's mausoleum, the giant screen projected the battle for all to see. Leaders of various factions stood before it. The master of the Dragon Demon God Realm had a dark expression. His hand, gripping a nearby pine tree, clenched so tightly the bark cracked and splinters fell to the ground. "Brother Dragon, are you all right?" someone asked, barely concealing his glee. "The Seven Gods Collegium certainly has some promising talents this year." The Dragon Demon God Realm Master forced a stiff smile. "In the battlefield of final reckoning, only one can live. Nothing is settled yet. Who knows who'll have the last laugh?" Feng Buxiu replied modestly, but despite his words, he couldn't hide the satisfaction on his face. "You're right," Wu Dozi from the Ghost God Collegium said mildly. "The one who laughs last is the true victor." Back on the battlefield, the last trace of Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth's spirit disintegrated beneath Shadow Tyrant's final strike. Su Zimo sheathed his blade, his gaze calm as he looked toward Grand Emperor Hidden Sky. "Don't be rash," Grand Emperor Hidden Sky said, taking a step back with a chuckle. "It's not time for us to fight yet." With a wave of his hand, the beads in his grasp spun rapidly, forming a vortex that swallowed him whole. "Let him go," Su Zimo said when Ji Juning moved to pursue. "No need to hurry. In this battlefield, we'll meet again soon enough." "Are you all right?" Ji Juning asked. "Slaying one Grand Emperor is hardly enough to trouble me," Su Zimo replied. When he looked up, his score, which had been at 100, had skyrocketed to 100,100. Killing a single person had granted him 100,000 points. "That's normal," Ji Juning explained. "Among us contenders, the points are extremely high. The native creatures here are worth far less. It's meant to encourage mutual slaughter." Su Zimo nodded, scanning the dense banana forest around them, but still couldn't see its edge. "Let's go," he said, sheathing Shadow Tyrant and walking forward. They traversed the rainforest for more than half an hour, yet still found no exit. "Is this place really that vast?" Ji Juning frowned. "It's not that the place is large," Su Zimo said, frowning slightly. "We're just walking in circles." When he looked ahead, they had somehow returned to the very spot where he had fought Grand Emperor Heaven Mammoth. The countless craters confirmed it, they had gone nowhere. "This banana forest is a labyrinth," Ji Juning muttered. Su Zimo leapt upward, trying to gain a higher vantage point, but he had underestimated the labyrinth's power. The higher he rose, the taller the banana forest grew. No matter how high he went, all he could see was endless greenery. "Do you remember that bamboo banana panda?" Ji Juning asked. Perhaps it knows the way out. Su Zimo nodded slightly and took out the heaven derivation astrolabe. In theory, the compass could pierce through all formations and reveal hidden truths. But since coming to the 9 heavens, where the laws of the world were far more complex, its power had waned. It was now barely useful for simple tasks like finding that panda. With a wave of his hand, starlight scattered, and the compass began to spin. Under an endless rain of starlight, the compass spun faster and faster. As more celestial energy gathered, the image of the bamboo banana panda took shape above. A path of starlight appeared before them, a winding star road that stretched through the forest, vanishing into the distance. "Let's go," Su Zimo said, stepping onto the starry path and following it toward its end. After running for several minutes, the scenery around them began to change. The dense banana forest slowly transformed into a bamboo grove, lush, green, serene, and elegant. The air was cool and calm, the bamboo leaves swaying gently in the breeze. When Su Zimo and Ji Juning arrived, they saw the panda sitting cross-legged atop a bamboo stalk, playing a bamboo flute. The crisp melody echoed throughout the grove. With one leg crossed over the other, the panda leaned lazily against the thick bamboo leaves. When it saw them, it opened one eye and grinned. "Well, well, you actually managed to find me. You seem quite pleased with yourself," Su Zimo said calmly. "This bamboo forest is my territory," the panda replied. "If you want to leave, you'll have to please me." Before it could finish, a slash of blade energy erupted from Su Zimo's hand. The panda jumped to another bamboo stalk just in time, the one it had been sitting on splitting apart with a crack. "You people are all so violent," the panda complained. "Can't anyone just talk nicely? Poor bamboo." Grumbling, it broke off a stalk and began munching on it with a crunch. "Die or tell us how to get out," Su Zimo said evenly. "I choose neither," the panda retorted, sticking out its tongue and bolting into the distance. "After it," Su Zimo ordered, and he and Ji Juning gave chase. 3 figures, 2 in pursuit, 1 fleeing, raced through the bamboo grove, slicing through countless stalks along the way. But Su Zimo soon realized that while the panda's strength was low, its agility was extraordinary. It moved through the forest like a shadow, light and swift, blending perfectly with the surroundings. After some time, Su Zimo stopped. The panda stopped too, laughing. "What's wrong? Tired already?" Without answering, Su Zimo raised his hand. A fire lotus of Zhurong's divine flame bloomed in his palm. "If we can't leave," he said calmly, "then I'll just burn it all down." Zhurong's fire was the flame born from the Tao itself, so powerful it could even burn through the laws of reality. No matter what formation or illusion stood before it, one fire would cleanse everything. When the lotus flared to life, a blinding light illuminated half the sky, and flames crackled throughout the bamboo grove. "You despicable human!" the panda shrieked, frantically patting at the spreading fire. "If you can't catch me, why burn my bamboo? What did the little bamboo ever do to you?" Seeing that the divine fire could not be extinguished, the panda finally slumped to the ground, exhausted. "Fine, fine. I'll take you out. Just stop burning it." "See? That wasn't so hard," Su Zimo said, waving his hand. The flames vanished instantly, leaving only charred black bamboo behind. Luckily, the fire hadn't spread too far. Only half the grove was burned. "This forest was cursed by Lu Sheng," the panda explained. "Lu Sheng?" Ji Juning frowned. "You mean the saint who fought the White Emperor here and was slain?" The name Lu Sheng was well known across the entire ghost god heaven, not only because he had been a saint sovereign, but because he was the first known saint sovereign ever to be killed. To kill a saint sovereign, whose life and soul were separated and independent, was nearly impossible. Even if one's body and spirit were destroyed, as long as the life-death soul remained intact, they would survive. And yet, the White Emperor had done it. "That's right," the panda continued. "The White Emperor and Lu Sheng fought here long ago. Their battle lasted for years, shaking the entire heaven. In the end, Lu Sheng was slain, and this bamboo forest grew from his hair. Tens of thousands of strands, endless and unbroken. That's why the forest will never die. Then just tell us how to leave, Suzumo said. Sever the 3,000 threads of worldly desire, and the true path will reveal itself, the panda replied cryptically. Suzumo glanced at Ji Juning, and both seemed to understand. They closed their eyes, clearing their minds of distractions. Though their eyes were shut, their divine sense could still perceive the surroundings. The bamboo forest around them seemed to fade away, replaced by a single clear path sensed through spirit alone. So simple? Ji Juning asked in disbelief. The simplest truths are the hardest to grasp, the panda chuckled softly. As its voice faded, its figure slowly disappeared among the bamboo. This forest was formed from Lu Shang's hair, Suzumo murmured. Then what exactly was that panda? But he had little interest in investigating further. Closing his eyes, clearing his heart, he followed the sensed path and finally walked out of the forest. The rainforest behind them receded into the distance. Ahead, a city appeared, surrounded by verdant mountains and clear rivers, like a paradise untouched by time. Its vast walls stretched toward the horizon. The streets bustled with apparent life. Let's take a look, Suzumo said. When he and Ji Juning reached the gate, they saw two weathered stone characters carved above it. Solitary City. This name doesn't match the place at all, Ji Juning remarked. How could there be a city in the battlefield of final reckoning? Did you notice? Suzumo said quietly, glancing around at the crowd. None of these people have any vitality. Vitality was the essence of life, the living spirit and energy. The dead had none of it, only a stagnant aura of decay. But these people were different. They had neither life nor death upon them, like puppets on invisible strings. As Suzumo entered the city, the streets appeared lively and bright, but there was no warmth in the air. Sir, how much for these oranges? He asked a nearby vendor casually. The old man behind the stall smiled, but his eyes were dull, unfocused. He didn't even glance at Suzumo. Just then, a burly man walked over. Old son, I'll take 2 kilos of oranges, he said, tossing a few spirit stones onto the counter before grabbing a handful of fruit. Suzumo stood up and glanced at the old man selling oranges. Spirit energy gathered in the palm of his right hand, and he struck the old man's head heavily with one blow. The old man was instantly killed, but his corpse dissolved into a wisp of gas. A moment later, the gas condensed again and reformed into the old man's figure, sitting at his orange stall with the same smiling expression. All around, the people passing by, chatting and laughing, showed no reaction whatsoever to what had just happened. What's going on? Ji Juning asked in confusion. Let's move forward a bit, Suzumo said after thinking for a moment. The two of them walked past the open space before the city gate and entered the busiest street in the area. The street was packed with people, and the inns and taverns on both sides were bustling with customers. Waiter, 1 plate of chicken, a bowl of spring noodles, and a pot of hot wine. 1 plate of peanuts and stir-fried kidneys. Inside the tavern, the chatter and orders rose and fell in an endless stream. However, when Suzumo and Ji Juning entered, not a single waiter came to serve them. We'd like to order, Ji Juning shouted, but no one responded. Suzumo frowned slightly. With a wave of his hand, the blade aura of Shadow Tyrant burst forth, spreading for miles. A thunderous boom followed as the entire tavern collapsed in an instant. Everyone inside was buried beneath the rubble, yet the passers-by on the street outside remained completely unfazed. Within a single second, the destroyed building stood tall again, restored to its former state. The people who had been crushed moments ago were alive once more. Waiter, 1 plate of chicken, a bowl of spring noodles, and a pot of hot wine. The same laughter and conversation resumed inside the tavern, as though nothing had ever happened. What on earth is this? Ji Juning muttered, utterly bewildered. Don't bother looking further, Suzumo said calmly. This city operates under its own independent set of rules. Independent rules? Ji Juning frowned. It's like something pre-written, Su Zimo explained. The rules run automatically. These people are merely characters, each acting out their assigned roles. They have no independent will, which is why we can't interact with them. Then why does this city exist? Ji Juning asked. What caused it to appear? That I don't know yet, Su Zimo said, shaking his head. But everything in this world has its cause and effect. He continued walking deeper into the city, observing the scenery along the way, the buildings, the layout, everything was just like a real city. Eventually, Su Zimo reached the farthest point, standing before a great hall. The hall was dilapidated, its doorway covered in thick cobwebs. Dust clung lazily to every surface, and when the wind blew, it stirred up clouds of grime. The hall had no doors. Looking inside, it was completely dark. Nothing could be seen. As Su Zimo and Ji Juning stood before it, about to step inside, a humming sound suddenly filled the air. It was as if they had triggered some forbidden mechanism. The entire city began to shift. The massive walls all around started rotating. The ground beneath their feet trembled violently as booming sounds echoed without pause. Then, beams of light descended from the heavens, enveloping the whole city. The light split into countless rays. Each one hovered above a person's head, surrounding them in radiance. A moment later, the power surged skyward like waterfalls erupting from the earth, and waves of Saint Sovereign aura burst from every single person present. Saint Sovereigns. An entire city full of Saint Sovereigns. Were this to happen in the outside world, it would shock the heavens. Hundreds, no, thousands of people radiated the vast and boundless might of saints, their combined pressure making it hard to even breathe. Ji Juning's expression changed drastically. She could barely move a single step. Su Zimo's face was also solemn. A whole city of Saint Sovereigns, it was impossible, yet here it was, without a single flaw to be seen. Everyone began to move toward them, intending to encircle Su Zimo and Ji Juning. Glancing at the hall ahead, Su Zimo grabbed Ji Juning's arm and tried to rush forward. But as soon as they took a step, the oppressive saintly aura grew even heavier, pinning their bodies in place. They couldn't move. Even breathing became difficult. I'll hold them off. You go inside, Ji Juning said. You can stop them? Su Zimo asked in surprise. If they were truly Saint Sovereigns, of course not, she replied. But I don't believe they are. So I'll try. As she spoke, the fox spirit behind her, normally white, began turning blood red. That crimson hue spread like spilled blood. The blood fox's appearance was said to herald calamity. Ji Juning's hands formed a series of seals, and the blood fox howled skyward like a wolf. When the moon is full, the calamity fox descends. The fox let out a piercing cry and leapt in front of them, facing the countless so-called Saint Sovereigns head-on. Go, Ji Juning commanded. Su Zimo took a step forward, the pressure around him intensifying with every inch he moved. He could hear the cracking of his own bones. Ji Juning raised her hand, and the blood fox charged forward, bearing the brunt of the crushing force. It howled again and again, buying Su Zimo the moment he needed to break free and step into the hall. As he crossed the threshold, he heard the blood fox's final, anguished scream behind him. But once inside, Su Zimo had no time to look back. The moment he entered the great hall, he was greeted by a series of eerie, guttural roars. It sounded as though something within was shrieking in torment. Ahead stretched a long, dim corridor, lit only by flickering candlelight. In the faint yellow glow, murals covered the walls on either side. And from somewhere down that corridor came the angry, despairing voice. White Emperor, how long do you plan to keep me trapped? Despicable thief, why won't you answer? I know your avatar is here. Let me out, damn you. As Su Zimo walked further along the corridor, the shouting abruptly ceased. Who's there? A harsh voice demanded. Someone from the outside world, Su Zimo replied calmly. He continued walking until he reached the corridor's end, and finally saw what was making the noise. Before him stood a man, his body covered in blood, flesh torn open. His hair was matted with gore, hanging down over a face marred with countless scars. His eyes glared at Su Zimo with feral intensity. "So, another hunter has come this year," the man said with a cold laugh. "Once outsiders enter this place, they never leave." "Who are you?" Su Zimo asked. "Lu Shang,"